All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Community Infrastructure Services Committee meeting. First, we have two consent items. Number one, on-street parking regulations, Brom Street. And number two, on-street loading zone, Queen Street North. Mayor Verbanovic?
Yeah, I'd actually like to move number 2 out of consent, please.
Okay, so we're going to need the majority of council to approve. All in favor? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to follow up on it because I've had some dialogue with some of the Duke Street food block folks. And while this is an alternative, it's not an ideal set of circumstances, particularly those that have larger volumes of goods to bring in. Mm-hmm. I just want to better understand what the various options were that were looked at. I mean, is it possible, for example, in that stretch to have something on the opposite side of Duke Street potentially instead of on Queen, and so on, as an option?
Okay. Is there a staff person to answer that one?
I don't know. Are you handling those? Or?
Oh, Mr. May or Ms. McGoldrick?
So through you, Chair, I've just sent a message to the Director of Transportation to see if he can get here as quickly as possible. So perhaps we can defer that item and move on.
Absolutely. Okay. We'll defer that till we have the right staff in place to answer.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzola.
I had a similar question.
On the same topic?
On the same topic.
Okay, so we'll defer. Thank you. Okay, so do we have any questions on the Brom Street regulations? All right, so let's vote on that. All in favor? Oh, do we have a mover? Okay, Councillor Galloway-Sealock moves it. All in favor? I need a show of hands one more time. All in favor? Thank you. That passes. All right, so next we have on to discussion items number 3. We have a delegate for number 4, so I think we'll first discuss number 4, resident-led traffic calming. We have a 5-minute PowerPoint. Okay, sorry. Who wants my attention? We're going to start with number 3 then, sidewalk infill through roadway reconstruction. Okay, so that's who we have the delegations for. All right, so first we have Mr. Mercer. Do we have Mr. Mercer here? Please join us. Hello there. So you have 5 minutes to give your presentation.
So the countdown timer is at 1:53.
We're working on it, don't worry. If you start now, you'll have more time. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Ms. Chair, council members, thank you for allowing me an opportunity to present to you today. Appreciate that. I know you have a lot of material that you go through, so I thought I'd just highlight the points that were in the report, which is on the screen in front of you. So this is the Bond Street reconstruction. Part of it is the infill of the sidewalk. You'll note that it was a priority 2 item, and that is recommended that there be an installation of sidewalk on the east side of Bond Street. There is one already presently on the west side, and the note was that there was no identifiable constructible concerns with the proposed area. This is just a quick map of Bond Street to orient yourselves as to where it's located. So it's a little dotted line in the center of that circle. And then there was some survey information to show sort of the feedback. We had a 14% response rate to the surveys. And then you can see of the 2 residents that are affected by this change, both opposed it. I'm representing the Lancaster Plaza, which is one of the people who, I'm not so sure we oppose it. We just want to make sure that the current use of the land doesn't change substantially. We are in support of safe pedestrian traffic, particularly given it is a plaza. We want to ensure that all the retail customers are safe and moving about, and all the children that are in the local schools can move through the neighborhood in a safe manner. And that's primarily where this concern comes from. There was a note about financial implications. I just added that just as part of it. What I wanted to show you was some pictures of the area, as you may not have had an opportunity to move yourself through the area. This is the sidewalk as it currently exists, facing north on Bond Street. So Bond Street's on the left, and that's the sidewalk looking north. And you can see there's about 2 feet away from the curb of Bond Street. This is now looking the opposite direction, and you'll see that the sidewalk would go right through that tree and that rock if it is to follow the path of where the sidewalk is. Now, I haven't actually seen any plans of how it's supposed to be laid out, so I don't really understand what the implication of it is. This is more of this grass area that's past it. In the distance there, you can see a truck that is unloading in the unloading zone, loading zone area behind the plaza. Another picture of that, you can see that we have waste pickup and storage at the back of the plaza. We have a loading and unloading zone there, and you can see that that area meets at street level. This is again the back of the plaza. The plaza was constructed in the 60s, and it was constructed as a loading and unloading zone area, and has been in that use for the entire time of the plaza's existence. And this is now looking again from Elizabeth down to Bond Street. You can see there are hydro poles right in the middle of where the sidewalk would be. There's Bell telephone boxes right here where also the sidewalk would be. So I'm not sure I understand why there's no impact to the infrastructure. Seems to be an awful lot of infrastructure that have to move to support where the sidewalk goes. And again, this is looking at it, the plaza at the back. I'm here today representing the tenants of the plaza and the owner of the plaza to ask that if this does move forward, that the use case that you see currently, where this is used for safe unloading and loading of goods to the plaza, remains in that case. And that consideration ensures that we can have safe unloading and loading of garbage refuse bins and material to the tenants of the plaza, and they continue to be successful in their business, and that their business continues to be able to support the revenue that is generated for the city through the payment of property taxes. And thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mercer, for your presentation. There are some questions. Councillor Verdanis.
Thank you, Mr. Mercer, and thank you for bringing those pictures in. And you're right. I mean, we don't always get a chance to get out to these sites, so this is really informative and helpful. My understanding from the pictures that preceded this one is that there is sidewalk on the opposite side of Bond Street.
On the opposite side of Bond Street, that is correct. There is a sidewalk on the west side of Bond Street, if I can find that picture. I don't have a very good picture of that, but there is a sidewalk all the way along the west side of Bond Street. That is true. Yeah. And the sidewalk that they're proposing to put in is just basically from where that tree is to Elizabeth Street.
Right, okay. Notwithstanding that probably employees maybe walk into the plaza from this sidewalk that we're seeing, and people, there is a sidewalk on the frontage of the plaza too, is there?
On Lancaster Street, there is a sidewalk. Yes, okay. Lancaster Street is a busy street, and there is a sidewalk there.
Okay. I am interested to ask staff some questions about this, but I wanted to at least thank you for bringing them in. I think that these pictures in, it's very important for us to get a better picture of what's happening. So thank you.
And as long as we have the opportunity to be considered as the process moves forward, we really appreciate the opportunity to continue the dialogue.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, just if you can come back, Mr. Mercer, there are a few more questions. Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, you're going to want to continue using that as a loading zone in the future, is that right?
That is correct. We would like that the no change to the use case that is currently there as a loading zone as it has been since the plaza was constructed. Yes.
Do you
please.
have any other alternatives?
No, we do not.
That's the only, okay, that's fine, thank you.
I have one additional question, just that part that you showed in a different photo, where the driveway is quite extensive, this part. Oh, this is where the garbage bins are. So when the garbage truck comes to unload, if there was a sidewalk there, would the garbage truck be
Driving over correct.
Right over where the sidewalk is?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
It's because it's the lift kind, where they drive in,
Yep.
lift it, and tip it.
Yep, and so are these for both bins for a single business, or are they multiple tenant use?
So it's hard to see in the picture. The one that is closest, I guess, to me is a common use bin for 5 tenants in the plaza, because the city no longer picks up garbage for commercial properties, so we had to implement that as a solution. Then there is a second green bin that is for the pizza store, and beside that is a grease trap bin, also for the pizza store. And then there is a larger bin that is on the opposite side that is along the driveway, which is for halal meats, which is a large grocer.
And so will we, we don't have the map of your entire site plan, but given the proposed sidewalk, wouldn't we look to another spot on your site for those garbage bins and grease trap?
So there isn't another place except in front of the plaza, which wouldn't do.
Right, okay. Thank you. And just to clarify for the purposes of full information, it's not the city, it's the region that collects the waste, so it's not the city, whoever. Just so you know, yeah. Okay, so we have, thank you very much. Oh, do we have additional questions for Mr. Mercer? Ms. Scott, Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Sorry, just one question. Are you aware whether the existing use was as originally planned, or if it just sort of became the natural use sort of under the radar as the years have gone by?
No, the plaza was built as a Zayres Plaza, and this has always been a loading and unloading zone. If I can show you, if you see the dark green window, I suppose there, that actually has a conveyor belt that comes out the back where they could store their goods in the basement at the time that was developed.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Yanetsky.
Yeah, a couple of questions. From your experience, is there much pedestrian traffic on this side of the street, walking with a... Nothing, okay.
I think maybe, and again, we are very much in support of the safe movement of pedestrians and particularly children. I have 3 children myself. When we are at the plaza, I have noticed maybe 1, possibly 2 or 3 children who walk by after school on a regular basis, and it's the same 3 children that are coming through. The pedestrian traffic, if there is any, is likely to be on the west side, though it's fairly rare. Bond Street is a very quiet street. It doesn't have a lot of traffic, unlike Lancaster Street, which is a main thoroughfare that has a lot of traffic.
Okay, and I guess residents who live on that street in the immediate area would also come shopping or do whatever they would through the back entrance sort of thing, through the parking lot.
There's no back entrance to the plaza.
No, not to the building, but they'll walk through the parking lot.
Correct. They would
to get to the stores, as opposed to walking around the block sort of thing.
No, they would walk through the parking lot.
Exactly.
Correctly, yes.
Yeah. Now, if things don't work out and the sidewalk gets implemented, are there no parking signs on this side of the street at this moment or anything like that to prohibit parking? No. Because I'm just wondering, maybe loading may end up being on the street, which is not really encouraged, but that may be the alternative. I'm just throwing that out.
So that would be an unfortunate end solution, but it would not be one that would be, an end person's business.
Right. Okay. Right. Thank you very much.
Just so that I highlight, the grocery store that's in there now, that's one of their delivery trucks there, and their primary business is halal meat, so they have delivery of large meat stock that comes in. So the closer they are to the door, the less time that meat stays in an airborne environment. So it's healthier.
Okay. I just want to let council know, let the committee know that we have 4 additional delegations on this topic, so there may be additional information that comes forward. We have one more question for you, Mr. Mercer. Councillor Gazzola?
I'm lined up for staff.
Aha, okay. That's all the questions we have for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
You're welcome. All right, next we have Judy DeWitt. Thank you for coming in. You have 5 minutes for your presentation.
Good morning, Your Worship, Councilmen, ladies and gentlemen. I wish I didn't have to speak from notes, but I do want to make sure I cover all of my points. Let me begin by stating that we are all grateful for the replacement of the infrastructure that runs down Shantz Lane, and we look forward to many winters with no more regular water main breaks. We are, however, opposed to the inclusion of sidewalks, especially on both sides of the street, and this includes everyone. Even the 50% who voted in favor of a sidewalk on one side of the street, by and large, said that they did so out of a fear of having a decision forced on them, and they felt that if they chose the lesser of two evils, that this would be more palatable, perhaps, to the city. We have many reasons for our opposition. Mature trees will have to be cut down to make way for the sidewalks. Landscaping on the residential side of the street will be marred in order to carve out a right-of-way for the sidewalk. Worst of all, the expressway will loom large and dirty in our lives, spilling noxious chemicals and noise into our front yards and onto our houses. And this happens every hour of every day, all the time. The trees that line the west side of Shantz Lane, that's on the expressway side, are Russian olives that were planted in the late 70s to serve as a buffer between the homes on our street and the expressway. Those trees have grown and matured into a nearly solid line of greenery that provides a lovely summertime screen covering the blank wall that flanks the highway. I'm referring to the acoustic wall. These trees block the traffic noise so effectively that you can almost forget that there's a highway up there. The line of Russian olives, along with the trees on the residential side, thicken out over the course of the summer, and they create a lovely tunnel effect that really makes it look much like the way the lane used to look in bygone days. Trees, as I'm sure everyone knows, perform a service that benefits everyone in the wider area, including those respondents from several blocks away who noted that they either support sidewalks or are indifferent to what happens on our little street. Trees have a remarkable ability to absorb and trap airborne dirt and chemical particles such as nitrogen oxide, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, and ozone, all chemicals that are spewed into the air above the expressway all the time. They also absorb carbon dioxide, one of the primary chemical compounds that influence global warming. The cooling effect of trees can reduce air temperatures by 1 to 3 degrees in paved areas, reducing the volatile organic compounds emitted from asphalt surfaces and automobile exhaust, leading in turn to a lowered production of ground-level ozone. You can see why I included my notes. In regard to human health, the ultrafine particles discharged into the air by car exhaust settle into the lungs and then penetrate the bloodstream. These invasive particles have been linked to sharp increases in diabetes, cardiovascular complications that can lead directly to heart attack or stroke, respiratory conditions such as pneumonia, asthma, and more recently, there has been an uptick in the incidence of autism and dementia in people subjected to chronic exposure to highway pollutants. My front door is less than 100 meters from the expressway. The tearing out of those protective trees will leave me with a view of an ugly blank wall. We residents of Shantz Lane will have to bear the consequences of the city's apparent preference for a handful of walkers who might use the street. Pedestrian traffic is very low. In addition to the Russian olives planted by the region in the late 70s, I have a lovely huge maple in my front yard. I know that all these trees shelter me from the worst effects of the highway pollution spilling into my front yard, but they also offer a peaceful, lovely screen to the noise and ugliness of the highway. We have to contend with the pollution of the highway, and we'll have next summer pretty much wiped out by the construction on our street, an event that we await with considerable dread. We respectfully request that you leave us our trees, that little strip of grass on the expressway side of the street, and the greenery that we are able to salvage from the concrete and the cars. But please, no sidewalks on either side.
Thank you very much, Ms. DeWitt. We have a few questions for you. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Marsh. Judy, thank you so much for coming in. I have visited your home before with some of the other water issues, so I know what you're talking about the trees. I think some of the thought of why the thought of putting sidewalks in is because of the trail that comes off of the conservation area and leads to Weber Street. If there wasn't a sidewalk, could you maybe be in favor of some sort of a trail that would link Weber Street to the walking trail that goes through the conservation area?
Yes, we've discussed that. Are you speaking of a gravel trail, perhaps?
A gravel or some kind of a maintained trail that would not affect the trees.
I think everybody would be in favor of a solution as long as it doesn't affect the trees. Okay. We could support that happily.
And as far as actual foot traffic on Chance Lane, Chance Lane comes off of Ross Avenue, so I would imagine that as people are walking down Ross Avenue, they would just stay on Ross Avenue to get to Weber Street. Is that?
I'm sorry, I didn't follow you.
Oh, so if someone is, because Chance Lane is an offshoot of Ross Avenue.
Oh, right.
If someone lives on Ross Avenue and they want to get to Weber Street, they would probably stay right on Ross Avenue and not come up to your Chance Lane to get to Weber Street. Is that a correct assumption?
Probably they would remain on Ross, and the people who do walk down the street tend to stay on the expressway side.
Okay. Just from your personal observation, what is vehicle traffic like on Chance Lane?
Very limited.
Okay, so have you experienced any safety issues as you walk on Chance Lane to get to Weber Street? Are you?
Never. I walk every day and I've never had any difficulty.
Okay, thank you, Judy.
Thank you. Next, we have a question from Councillor Gazzola.
Yes, thank you. You've answered all my questions in the previous comments, so I'll just take a minute to. I did want to compliment you for coming forward and speaking and telling us your thoughts. How long have you lived in that area?
45 years.
Okay, so you know the area well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. DeWitt. Those are all the questions we have for you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Lucille Waito. Hello.
Good morning, Your Worship, council members, ladies and gentlemen. I will be using notes as well. Judy makes a very persuasive argument, and we support their position. No group of residents will be more permanently affected by the removal of the greenery along the west side of the lane as they will be, and we would ask that their request be seriously considered. On the south side of the lane, as it turns to the bend toward Ross, there are 3 large maple trees planted in the early 70s, not by the city, but by Harold and his father. These trees abut his Ross Avenue properties and have formed a beautiful buffer to the Conestoga Parkway for many years. Their spreading canopy with its large surfaced leaves provides considerable shade onto the asphalt and property, helping to reduce heat island effect, improve air quality from expressway exhaust fumes, deaden the considerable noise from the expressway, and prevent stormwater runoff. They provide a screen against the unsightly noise barrier and help reduce the prevailing wind speed. These beautiful trees provide not only aesthetic value to our neighborhood, but bring enjoyment and a sense of well-being. The removal of these trees would totally eliminate all of the above-mentioned benefits. Visually, it would be devastating if they were removed. Stormwater runoff on the lane continues to produce flooding and pooling at the start of the trail. Keeping trees and greenery can help reduce the current heavy runoff. A sidewalk will only increase runoff and its pollutants seeping into the ground. The Shantz Lane Sidewalk Infill Project is unique among the 4 being proposed. Because Shantz Lane and this end of Ross are flanked on 2 sides, boxed in, as it were, in its proximity to the high-traffic, high-speed expressway, its flyover, and the Highway 8 heading toward Cambridge in the 401, we feel the negative environmental impact of tree and vegetation removal warrants reconsideration. The laneway is narrow and was never meant for sidewalks. Based on the fact that Harold and I and others have lived on Ross since the early 60s and have observed firsthand the steady decline in pedestrian traffic, plus knowing the increasing trend to bus or drive kids to school, we feel confident recommending that sidewalks are unwarranted, especially at the severe cost of losing the mature trees and greenery and the benefits they provide. By putting in sidewalks, especially on the west side of Shantz, there's no room to replant trees, and this neighborhood has already lost 13 ash trees on Ross. They are not scheduled for replacement till 2018. Healthy trees need to stay. I've spoken to a lot of people, and everybody was not only against a sidewalk on the lovely east residential side, but aghast that the city would even consider it. Let me re-emphasize, our proximity to the expressway and flyover with its grimy pollutants and ever-increasing noise, plus the fence which restricts space for replanting after a sidewalk goes in, complicates the issue, and this is why we are so strongly opposed to it. The city has made a good decision to address the infrastructure on Shantz Lane. We are asking that you make an exemplary decision by foregoing sidewalks in favor of the environment, its trees and greenery. Please don't allow the occasional hiker or biker to dictate what we will see every time we open our front doors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a few questions for you. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Marsh. Thank you so much for coming in and bringing your perspective in as well. As a longtime resident, how do you feel the vehicular traffic is on Shantz Lane?
I know that vehicular traffic has increased from when we were there in the 60s, 70s, 80s. One of the concerns about the traffic is that the speed that they come up that lane, and they rarely stop at the lot. I'm right at that intersection. If they were to miss the stop sign, they'd end up in my living room. So I do observe that there are fast vehicles coming. A lot of people do go down Shantz instead of Ross, but compared to some of the, like Franklin or Weber, of course, nothing like that traffic.
As a resident in that neighborhood who walks it, do you feel concern for your safety when you're walking along Shantz Lane?
Oddly enough, no, because it seems that whenever I am on the street, there really don't seem to be many cars. It's early morning when people are going to work that it seems, or coming back perhaps, that it seems to be the worst.
Okay, and you bring up some very good points about our environmental safety as opposed to the pedestrian safety and the need for it. So thank you very much for taking the time and the work you put into your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Yanetsky.
Yeah, thank you for coming in and making your presentation. Some good points there. You said you lived there back since the 60s. Were your houses built, the house that you live in along the street there, built before the expressway was built?
Absolutely. They were built in 1959, and the expressway went in the late 60s, completion in the early 70s. My father worked for E&E Sigmiller, and they were the ones that put it in, and he worked on that job.
So when you lived there initially before the expressway, what was across the street from you? Where the expressway is right now, what was on those lines?
It was just sort of a bush area. We used to be able to walk through there to go to there's some a little park. Montgomery Park. Yes, and we used to be able to walk right through there. To be honest, I was thinking of that the other day, and I can't remember specifically, but it was an open area.
Yeah, because Montgomery Park is on the other side, so.
Yes.
The previous delegation indicated that there was a trail path on the other side. What happens during the winter time? Is that maintained at all, and people are forced to walk on the roads, or?
When people take Ross Avenue and then turn onto Chance and then continue on Chance on the west side, there's nothing to walk there. Some people might use that trail which comes from Ottawa Street as a shortcut. But then once they get onto the street, of course, they're just on the asphalt.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Verbanovic.
Thank you, and thanks for coming in today and sharing your perspectives. I guess, the one, and I understand that this is a unique situation because of the proximity to the highway and so on. I guess my question to you is twofold. If we were not to look at putting sidewalk on any side, how do we come to terms with, for example, our pedestrian charter as a city that actually calls for walkability, and in particular, the concerns that we hear from those, for example, who have physical disabilities or visual disabilities and are looking for a sidewalk. And at the same time, going along with that, the notion that, 40 out of the 46 area residents have said they'd like to see a sidewalk on at least one side. Mm-hmm.
I agree with Councillor Schneider that perhaps a walkway of some other nature than a concrete sidewalk would probably be appropriate. I've not witnessed at this point anybody in a wheelchair or any other kind of assisted walking trying to use that. Mostly people coming off the path at this time are cyclists. And many of the hikers, if they do, always seem to loop back up on toward Ross. So it's not by heading down to Weber Street there's any place to go then. You're kind of at a dead end now. But students to Eastwood Collegiate are the ones that mostly use that. And I used it. I went to Eastwood, and of course, what did we do? We walked on the road and we didn't think anything of it. But I can appreciate, as you say, that the city has a commitment to putting in proper walkways. I would hope that perhaps we could do something other than a concrete sidewalk, and something that would definitely not affect the greenery and the trees.
Right, and I don't know if, for example, maybe the compromise might be sidewalk, because it is then can be clean during the winter months, but going curb face as opposed to having a boulevard, which would then limit the any impact on trees potentially on the. In particular, I'm thinking on the side where the trail is and so on.
One of the things we were curious about is if you put a sidewalk in there, how do you finish a sidewalk exactly adjacent to the roadway, or would boulevards be included in that? Because that would really be restrictive in the space.
And I'm not sure what staff have looked at in that regards. Perhaps staff can answer that later on.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. There are no further questions.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Sarah Delvry as a delegate. Is there a Sarah Delvry? Okay. Crystal Shira. Welcome.
Hi, thanks. Sorry, didn't come prepared. I'm a mom of a very spry little 4-year-old girl. We've been on Chance Lane for about 6, almost 7 years now. So I come at the younger side than everybody else. My daughter has no fear, so she'll run out that way anytime. And I see people walking. The only thing that I'm afraid of with that street, and honestly 100% opposed to sidewalks, is the bend when you come around. We have petitioned, and I mean signed petitioned, asking for anybody to just look into putting speed bumps into this road. Because when you come off of Ross, they come flying down, and it's a blind bend, and I am closest to the bend. So when my daughter goes out and plays, that's the only thing that I'm afraid of, is that she's going to get hit one day. A sidewalk won't save her on either side, so no matter which way we go. In terms of people who walk, in the wintertime, they avoid Chance Lane because there's no point when they come around the bend. We've had cars hit hydro poles. We've had trees collapse down the fences. Nobody takes care of them. 3 years ago, 2 trees fell down and they're still sitting there with a broken fence. So putting in a sidewalk isn't going to change all these safety concerns for the kids. They use Ross Ave when they need to go to school in the winter, and they use the highway side for the summertime. And when we're sitting here thinking about taking down all these trees, if we need to face a highway with no sound restriction, and I have a little girl who's only going to know the noise of a highway growing up, that's not fair to us. So that's about it. Sorry guys, I didn't come overly prepared.
No, that's perfectly fine. You did great. Are there any questions for Ms. Shira? Well, I have one question. So when your child comes out and runs out, are you saying that at this point she's able to run out onto the road?
Well, yes and no. Our driveways go straight out. So we have a joined driveway with our neighbor, so she usually plays between the two of them. But there's times like she has a bike, and we have one of those 4-wheel Jeep powered ones, so we'll go up and down the road, but we stick to the highway side, because if anyone were to come around the bend, they wouldn't see us on the other side.
Right.
So, and that's still our lawn though, right? So she'll either play on our lawn or she'll play in our driveway.
Okay. And when she was younger and you ostensibly had a stroller with her when you wanted to walk with her anywhere, did you have to take the stroller then on the road to go anywhere?
Yeah, I had no fear of it, honestly. We just stick to the house sides for us because we know our neighbors, so we say hi to them. And then if we're walking anywhere, we just go to the highway side just to get us out to where we're going.
Okay.
It's just, the only thing that I'm afraid of, like I said, is that bend. And we've asked many, many times, and they told us when it came to the speed bumps, we could either rent one of those signs that say how fast people are going, but otherwise we don't get enough traffic for us to require it. So it's kind of funny. It's like a catch-22 for us.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. So please click in if committee has questions of staff. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. First question, I'm trying to remember, it was a while ago when we passed our sidewalk infill policy, but I thought there was an understanding that sidewalk suggestions that were priority 1 were delegated and would not come to this council. Am I misremembering that?
Through you, Madam Chair. Sidewalks that are that receive a minimum of 90 points as priority 1 have been pre-approved and aren't required to come back. Anything between that 67 point and 89 point threshold is to come back to council.
I see. So even though it's priority 1, so if it's 90 points or higher, it would still be priority 1. But
that's correct.
Oh, okay, that clarifies the question. The issue with the loading area, what has staff put thought to how they would remedy that situation?
Through you, Madam Chair. Unfortunately, our engineering staff can't be here today, so I'll give you the Coles Notes version as I have it. Essentially speaking, when you saw those photos and you saw the hydro pole line, the sidewalk goes on the road side of that. So what they've done in terms of design is they've narrowed the roadway somewhat and installed a sidewalk so that it's on the opposite side of the hydro poles. It's not on the side. And that's why within the report you'll see that it says there really aren't any operational concerns because they've been addressed in that sense. With regard to the loading area, the intent there is to maintain a drop curb through the entire stretch so that they can still operate and their business in the same manner that they do now, other than the fact that there would be call it a curb-face sidewalk in that stretch.
Okay, so
Mr. Carmichael, you had clicked in as well. Do you have anything further to add? Okay.
Okay, so so my understanding is there would be a sidewalk and there would still be enough space for them to bring in their vehicles as they do now and not be on the sidewalk in staff's plan.
Through you, Madam Chair, they may be on the sidewalk at points given the size of the vehicles that you would be bringing in for loading and unloading, but as you saw in the one picture, if they're in parallel to the building, then yes, they'll still be able to fit. They'll be on the opposite side of the hydro pole.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you. Just a question for Sean Slane. It's pretty clear what the sentiment from the delegations are. Now, I'm assuming the trail along the closest to the expressway is necessitated because of the trail network. How onerous is it if those that are biking or walking along those trails, they cross the street? And I think there needs to be a sidewalk. There is a missing, sidewalk facility there, so it needs to be on the side of where the properties are. But how big of a deal is it if you were to forego on the side of across the street?
Mr. Cronkite?
Through you, Madam Chair, if we were to forego the trail on the expressway side, then we could shift the roadway slightly, still maintain the trees, and be able to facilitate the installation of the sidewalk in a more appropriate manner.
So that means the trees that are there right now, they wouldn't be impacted then? They wouldn't need to be cut down?
There will, regardless, if the trail goes in on the expressway side, there will still be some impact to trees. That's a fact of life in terms of this neighborhood when we try to, or if a sidewalk were to be installed.
If it were not to be installed, I'm saying.
If it were to be installed,
if the sidewalk were to only stay on the side of the properties.
Yes, there will still be some impact to trees.
Would it be just as significant if it were?
No, without installing the multi-use trail, then that facilitates maintaining all of the Russian olive trees that are currently there. It would be, there are some other trees that would be impacted on the opposite side, though.
Okay. From the feedback that was received from the neighborhood, outside of what the delegations have presented, what was the kind of the pushback? Are they comfortable in having the sidewalk where the properties are, as opposed to across the street? Or is there those that are opposed to sidewalk on either side?
Through you, Madam Chair, we didn't identify specifically whether or not which side the neighborhood would rather have the sidewalk. We just asked whether or not they would want it on one side or both. And as you can see within the survey, 40 out of 46 residents that responded that don't directly live on the street had asked for a sidewalk on a minimum of one side. As I said previously, we didn't identify what side that would be.
I appreciate you've already answered that there would be some impact if even sidewalks were not to go on where the properties aren't fronting. Do you know how many trees would still, or how many trees would have to be cut down if the trail were to go along that side?
So if the multi-use trail were to go in, there are approximately 3 Russian olive trees that would need to be removed. Should that multi-use trail not go in and we only install sidewalk on the opposite side, I don't know exactly how many will be impacted, because we can then shift the design slightly to try to make sure that we minimize those impacts.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I appreciate that. And it seems that staff have looked at alternative measures, and I'll come back for that. With this report, I would like to make a recommendation that it be only on the side where the street fronting.
Okay, thank you. Noted. Councillor Cazzola.
Can you tell me what the cost for the Chance Lane is to put in the sidewalks? What cost have we budgeted?
Through you, Madam Chair, without our engineering department here, we don't have the expertise to give you that number. It would be an all-out guess if I were to give you a number at this point.
When you bring these reports to us, why would you not just include one line that states the cost? So if I'm going to ask you for the Bond Ave, you won't have a cost for that either.
That's correct.
So can we have staff follow up by email to council, please?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, we can.
Thank you.
Okay, one other question. I'm trying to figure out why Chance Lane is a priority 1. And so I read where you define that, and you say you need sidewalks on both sides because they connect to a significant number of pedestrian origins and destinations. And yet, listening to people that live there and have lived there for many years, it doesn't seem to be a great number of pedestrians or vehicles.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Carmichael?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair. Staff have identified through the policy for sidewalk infill, the priorities are established based on points scored based on what generators are in the area, so on and so forth. Specific to Chance Lane, it's within 200 meters of a transit route. It's within 800 meters of a high school or elementary school. It's within 400 meters of a mixed-use corridor. It's within 400 meters of a place of worship. It's within 400 meters of a community program, within 400 meters of a type 1 or 2 trail. So those are the types of things that generate the point totals that justify, through the policy, the need for further sidewalks.
Okay, you've got a lot of numbers there. Now, do you have any numbers on how much those are actually used to connect to all of those places? Or that they just happen to be there within this prefixed radius that you're dealing with?
Through the Chair, the policy doesn't get into the details. We don't have the staff or time to record all the activities that are happening in all these locations. It's a general policy reflecting that with these types of destinations in the area or within the certain distances, that it's fair to anticipate pedestrian traffic.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. DeWitt, you've had your opportunity to speak. Please, it's now time for council members on this committee to ask questions of staff.
I just wanted to correct a statistic that I've heard incorrectly quoted twice now. Is that possible?
If you can be brief, sure.
Very brief. It's been reported here as 40 out of 46 area residents were in support of it, and the stats were 21 out of 46. That's 46% approved both sides. 19 out of 46, that's 41% approved one side, and opposed were 6 out of 36.
Okay, yeah, we all have the reports. Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Schneider, you have questions of staff?
Yes, thank you, Chair Marsh. I noticed in this report the percentages of residents in favor are on the low side. And when I look further ahead in our report on Patricia Avenue, we have percentages of 68% in favor, the total area residents 90% in favor. How do we put that into our decisions for recommendations? The percentages of residents in favor. How is that factored in?
Through you, Madam Chair, that the information that you see within the report regarding surveys is strictly for council's perspective. So it's up to you to determine how you best see to make decisions based on that information.
Okay, thank you. My second question is, with the environmental issues that have been brought up, I noticed in the research quite a high number of people have a concern with tree loss removals and also impacted landscaping. And I can't help but think, as our delegation spoke, as we as a city here are trying to increase our tree canopy for the reasons that were brought forth by our delegations, that this is a difficult balance to find because there are definite environmental benefits to these trees, and losing them would definitely affect the look of the neighborhood, and I think the environmental safety of the neighborhood, which again, I'm trying to find that balance. So I guess and it's probably hard for you to answer this, but just again, is there any part of the environmental impact that goes into your recommendation, or is that simply for staff to, or for council to use as research and guiding us in our decision making?
Through the Chair, valid question. In talking with engineering staff, obviously there's concerns when there's a proposed loss of trees at any location, but the practice with engineering is they will replace any trees that are removed with a minimum of 1 per 1. Obviously not necessarily in the same location if they're being removed for a sidewalk or whatever it may be, but it will be reviewed to determine opportunities where trees can be added due to the loss of the ones that are proposed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Madam Chair, to staff, how many trees are we talking about on the expressway side?
Through the chair, sorry, we do not have that information.
And in my ward in Victoria Park, which was also a priority area for sidewalks, I noticed on one stretch along Jubilee Drive, you've weaved the sidewalk very successfully among trees to avoid damage to the trees, I presume. Is that not possible in this case?
Through you, Madam Chair. No, on Chance Lane specifically, in order to do a 3-meter multi-use trail within the proximity to the expressway, there just isn't the same space that we would have had along Jubilee Drive.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mayor Verbanovic.
Thank you. Just want to get clarification on the numbers so that we are all clear on them, because there does appear to be some question. So if I'm reading this correctly, 46 out of the 56 residents replied, correct?
Actually, a total of 56 responded out of a total of 261 that went out.
Okay, so then what's the difference between area residents and total area residents?
The total area residents is simply adding the directly affected people on the street with the area residents. Yeah.
Okay, so then out of those 56, 21 of them were in favor of both sides, a different 24 were in favor of one side, and 11 were opposed.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Davey.
Okay, I stepped out for 1 second, so apologies if this question was asked, but can we not, like under financial implications, is it not possible for us to get an idea of what the cost of these sidewalk implementations are, and so we can take that as part of the decision-making process?
Yes, actually, you're correct. It was asked,
okay.
And the answer is that we will be emailed later by
Perfect.
staff.
And on a go-forward basis, I think it's important because, especially if infrastructure has to be moved, it's good. The other question I have is to the delegate with the Fearless Daughter and the bend there. I realize that we have a traffic calming priority list, and there's no way that this would ever qualify. But I wasn't able to visit the area, but I did see on Google Street View here that it is a sharp bend, and there's no signage in terms of, the street that I live on has a similar bend, and there's a slow to 30 kilometers an hour or children playing, that sort of thing. Would staff have any problem looking at that between now and council?
Through the chair, absolutely not. No, we'd have no problem checking that to see if there's any signing or markings we can do to improve that concern.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fernandez.
So if I remember correctly, the residents who spoke about the impact on the resident side, there were 3 large maple trees that the gentleman to Ms. Wado's right, my right, planted that would be impacted by a sidewalk. I'm going to ask for a nod from them if I'm correct. Okay. And staff are saying that we would remove those trees and put in the small itty-bitty ones?
Through you, Madam Chair, there are 3 trees that would need to be removed near on Ross, near the intersection. And in terms of the stature of the trees that were to be installed, again, that would be up to our operations group, I guess.
Right.
But yes, typically, the
Yeah.
maturity tree is not going to be
So
replaced.
if I'm looking at the map that I have on 3-3, the dotted line on the expressway side is what I'm thinking is the connection that you want to make to the trail. So if we were to consider a curb-faced crushed gravel multi-use pathway, would we be able to do that without impacting the Russian olives?
Through you, Madam Chair, without further investigation, it's difficult to say, although, again, there is very limited space on that side of the roadway. Further crushed gravel, whether maintained or not, is going to end up on the roadway.
I didn't hear the last part, Mr. Cronkite.
The crushed gravel, especially be it curb face, would end up on the roadway through use of the trail.
Okay, I see what you're saying, but I think what we're trying to do here is we're trying to make connections for pedestrians and cyclists and what we should be considering is without a major impact to the residents. We want to follow our pedestrian charter, but we have to take into consideration the impact on the residents who have to live there every single day. I would like to see us at least investigate how we could do some kind of crushed gravel trail on the highway side. Can we have that done before council? Is there enough time?
Through you, Madam Chair, that investigation would need to be done by our engineering department, and given that they're not here today, I wouldn't want to speak on their behalf in terms of being able to facilitate that kind of design prior to council.
Okay. Then, Madam Chair, would I be able to put a deferral forward on this particular item?
We can look at that. We've already heard from Councillor Singh that he intends to bring forward a motion, so let's listen to what that motion is and then come back to you regarding a deferral.
Okay. So just going to Bond Street, as I think the photographs were very enlightening to me. Since there is already a sidewalk that pedestrians use on the one side of Bond Street, and the chances of people walking behind there recognizing that there are trucks coming in and out, there's garbage disposal. Quite frank, I don't know that I'd want to walk on the back of a commercial building when there's a sidewalk available to me on the residence side. What is the impetus? I know we have our priority sheet, we have our ranking sheet. This connection, help me understand where that priority is. Why did it float to the top?
Through the chair, this is a simple application of our sidewalk infill policy where we get into locations that are proposed for reconstruction. Staff will then follow up with an assessment of the location to determine what priority it is based on the sidewalk infill policy. And the challenges identified by the plaza are recognized and acknowledged, and I totally appreciate why they're being raised. However, through detailed design that engineering would conduct from this point forward before the construction, maybe some of those challenges can be mitigated. But having said that, staff at this point in time are purely trying to recommend what's proposed through our sidewalk infill policy, and sometimes details like this come up that have to be resolved through detailed design.
Okay. And I can appreciate that, Mr. Carmichael. I appreciate the fact that you're doing your job, you're trying to get little gaps in our sidewalks completed, and I think that that's important. But I think that there are times when we have to review that. So I don't want to go into comments because I'm sure there'll be an opportunity for that. But I want to put that deferral notice at least until after we hear from Councillor Singh.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a fair number of things on the agenda to cover, and so I just want to remind committee that if we have questions that have already been answered, let's not repeat them. Okay, Councillor Yanetsky.
Yeah, a couple of questions. In response to comments from staff of the four priorities, or the four streets that we are under consideration, you indicated that you're following through the process to do your infill, etc. Of these four, did you have any requests or complaints from residents saying, we need sidewalks here, let's go forward with it? Or are you just following your policies?
Through the chair, and we are not familiar with any specific requests for sidewalk, no. Okay. The other question I have, back to Chance Lane again. You've got the proposed sidewalks on both sides. In that stretch on the outer curve that does not abut the highway, but there's about 3 or 4 houses that front on the outer curve. Do they have sidewalks there? Or is that just the missing link that was missed? Or is there sidewalks between the expressway and Ross? On that one. Through the chair, the sidewalk is already in existence through that short connection.
It exists there.
To, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Singh.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to the motion that was, or the amendment that I was proposing, but I think in light that Councillor Fernandez wants to defer to get more information, that always helps. Even if we differ in our opinion, come council meeting, we can propose different directions at that point, but I think it's helpful that staff have some more information ahead. Okay.
Councillor Fernandez, do you want to click in?
So I would like to put forward a deferral on the Shants Lane sidewalk until we have some further information. Can we consider doing a multi-use trail on the highway side? I want to have a clearer understanding of what trees would be impacted if we did it on the resident side. But given the additional information that I just heard from Councillor Yaneski's question, I think it seems more logical to me to do anything on the highway side and to leave the impact. Because if there's already a sidewalk there, at least we've got something continuous on one side without people having to cross the street. So I think that was 3 things. Was that clear? Yep. Okay.
Okay.
And I suppose we need to have an understanding of the impact on the Russian olives. Can I ask if you can just indicate, are those Russian olives in there for 30 years? Is that my understanding?
All of 30 years.
All of 30 years. Okay.
Okay. Within the late 70s.
Okay, so 40 years. They do have a life span, unfortunately. Okay, that's all.
Okay, so do we have a date for your deferral? Until council? Do you want to wait until an update at council?
Well, we can get an update on council, but that's only a week away. Is that not correct, Jeff? Yeah. I don't know if that's actually enough time. So our final council meeting is the last Monday in June. Would that be possible for staff to have that information by then?
Or committee? Should we do it at the next committee meeting before that last council meeting?
Yeah, if staff can get that information by then, that would be great.
Through the chair, again, it's information we'll have to get through engineering, but I would think the June 12th committee date is a realistic one for us to get back to you with information.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. I think that more information on this, especially considering the impact, and we've got. We don't have that many houses along that stretch, and that 4 residents came out, I think, is very crucial and very important for us to recognize that fact.
Okay, and Mr. Carmichael, so is there a time crunch here that we would need to make a quick decision at a special council meeting on June 12th, or would it be able to wait till the regular cycle council meeting following that?
Through the chair, my understanding, all these reconstructions are occurring next year.
Wait a year.
So that I would suggest we do have some time to make finalized decisions.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mayor Verbanovic.
Well, thank you. And if it is coming back, I think it's important that we also hear from GRAC, and also because I think that group and their needs and concerns need to be factored into this. I think it's important that council keep in mind, and I don't want to get into a debate, but we've had 40 out of 46 people say they're looking for a sidewalk on at least one side. And so I think we need to keep that in mind too. Mm-hmm. And it's a balancing act, I understand that, but it's in fairness, it's not staff doing their job. Staff are doing what council has mandated, which is implement a pedestrian charter. And if this council wants to go away from that, then let's have that debate. I would certainly be disappointed to see us have that debate, but I would certainly welcome it if some think that we shouldn't have accessibility as a priority in this community.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. So we will be deferring that. And just for the purposes of clarification, GRAC stands for the Grand River Accessibility for Advisory Committee. Thank you. All right. So we have a deferral on the table just for Shants Lane. Do we have a motion for the other streets? Councillor Gazzola.
How does that system work up there? How do you get in line to speak up, or what's going on?
There's nobody skipping any cues here, Councillor Gazzola.
I've been waiting here in line to speak.
It's been a long time.
We had a deferral motion, and then all of a sudden we're getting all kinds of comments about all sorts of things.
Councillor Gazzola, do you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I want to know how this system works.
Well, we can certainly do a training session afterwards.
Yeah, I'd like that.
Great. That's all? Councillor Fernandez.
So are you asking a motion to move the other items?
Well, that's the way we're going to move forward.
Okay, so I'll put a motion forward to move the other items. I would like to do a separate vote on Bond Street, if we can.
Say it again.
I'd like to separate out Bond Street. So we're separating out Shantz Lane for a deferral, and I'd like to separate Bond Street out as well, so that we are actually moving Hill Street and Patricia first, and then separating out the other two for separate votes.
Okay, sounds good. Hill Street and St. Vincent Street and Patricia Ave are on the table, recommending that you have a motion for approval.
I apologize, a recorded vote on all of them.
Okay. Are there any comments regarding... Oh, here we have a couple people in the queue. Councillor Gallery-Seelock.
Well, in fairness, we asked staff to come back with a few things, I think, for Bond Street as well. So I would actually put forward a deferral, same timeline as Shantz Lane, to bring that back to us so we can make that decision as well in the due course of time, because there's no urgency to it. So I would defer that one as well.
Okay, so there's a motion to defer Bond Street to June 12th committee meeting as well. Thank you. Councillor Davey.
Thank you, and just so it doesn't get lost in the shuffle, I would think I should just formalize the amendment that staff explore appropriate signage on that bend in Shantz Lane, if we could.
Okay, great. All right, so first we're going to vote on the deferral of the Shantz Lane sidewalk infill, and I assume a recorded vote has been called for all of these decisions. Okay, so recorded vote on deferral of Shantz Lane. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Next, we have a deferral motion for Bond Street. Recorded vote, please. Okay, all in favor? Okay. All opposed? And both motions carry. Thank you. Next, we have the recommended sidewalk infill for Hill Street and St. Vincent Street, as well as Patricia Avenue. So, recorded vote. And that passes unanimously. All right, so the amendment, Mr. Davey, was just to have the signage on the bend, and I think that staff understands that is part of the. I don't think we need to have an official vote on that amendment. Okay, we'll all remember. All right. So that's it for number 3. Let's move on to discussion item number 4, resident-led traffic calming. And I believe we have a 5-minute presentation on that. Comment from Councillor Gallery-Seelock.
It's to do on the last one, and I understand that Barry and Ken were on the hot seat. I'm not sure how when we bring forward a report that requires both engineering and traffic to be here. How come we don't have engineering staff here? I think that's a little bit of a concern. So I think moving forward, it would be important for us to have both, because we do have questions. So I appreciate Ken and Barry for taking all the questions, even though some of it wasn't in your expertise. And I look to maybe CAO, Mr. Walmer, to make sure when these come forward, we have the right staff here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure that Mr. Carmichael and Mr. Cronkite would appreciate that. All right, next up then, who's presenting first? Mr. Cronkite.
All right, thank you. Love My Hood. So it was Kitchener's first neighborhood strategy. It encourages residents to take a lead role in their neighborhoods and making them great, and really establishing a firm foothold in community and really creating that value in a way. And it's our job as staff to help them along the way, and that was identified through the process as well. It includes 18 action items and 3 areas of focus: great places, connected people, and working together. All 18 action items were requested by residents through one of the most comprehensive community engagement strategies that the City of Kitchener ever conducted. A common theme heard throughout the consultation process for the neighborhood strategy is the desire to have more traffic calming tools that residents can lead in order to make their streets safer, foster community, and create that sense of place. Traffic calming, when creatively done at that grassroots level, is based on the premise that our neighborhood streets are an extension of our community and an area of interaction, and should not simply be dominated by the vehicle. Generally speaking, creativity within these types of traffic calming plans can have a greater overall impact on that relationship between the vehicle and the community, and more so than the traditional methods that you're used to seeing us bring forward. And those methods that we bring forward are really meant to control traffic and not create that interaction. So how does this differ from what we would typically do? So by developing this program, staff are really envisioning 3 streams of traffic calming, and you see those on the screen in front of you. Each stream has a very different intent and a very different method. So if we focus in on the traditional form of traffic calming, examples of those typical measures are speed humps, roadway narrowings, pedestrian refuge islands and medians. Typically speaking, it's done through the capital budget. It's defined by a priority and policy that we've previously developed, and that policy was approved back in May of 2014. When we start talking about the resident-led traffic calming, we're thinking about things that are a little bit more creative and more community-led. So you're talking about decorative crosswalks, intersection murals, potential planters, reactivating the roadway space in some way, shape, or form. The funding for that type of program really will come from the neighborhood matching grant or other grants, or ideally on a case-by-case basis. So when someone brings a plan forward, we'll be working with them to figure out how that will be funded. These aren't priorities that will be identified by staff, but rather identified by the residents and the residents that bring the ideas forward. And we're seeking approval for this plan through this report. In terms of the third stream, it's a stream that you won't have seen yet. We're bringing it forward on June the 12th. And it's a low-cost seasonal traffic calming program. So we've been doing a lot of research, not just for the resident-led traffic calming program, but for the seasonal low-cost traffic program as well. That will be measures such as temporary flex stakes and signs, speed advisory signs that some of us are already used to, and temporary warning signs. That will, again, be proposed to be from the capital budget and operating budget. It will be determined by consultation with staff and council in terms of where we would put those measures. And again, that report is coming on June 12th, so we'll be giving you more information about that stream at that time. So although each stream is significantly different in the way they're approached, they all share a common goal, and that's essentially to make our neighborhoods and roadways safer, as safe as we can.
Okay. Oh.
What we might see, painted crosswalks, roadway paintings, planter boxes, neighborhood lawn signs, temporary pop-up measures, alternative uses of parking spaces. And I'm really quickly going to run through 3 examples for you. So this was in the Westmount neighborhood in 2014. It was done completely by the Westmount neighborhood. It was a spin-off of an initiative that happened in Toronto. 2015, Mount Hope Right Up neighborhood established this program, which was an intersection mural at the intersection of Aarons and Wilhelm. Beautiful design that's been replaced since due to construction. And then finally, the Walking on Sunshine crosswalk that was installed on Lancaster Street. That's a thermoplastic product designed by one of the local residents there.
I'm not rushing you. If you want to wrap up,
You're
good?
We're good.
Okay, great. So we have some questions for you, please. You feel free to sit or stand. All right. Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Cronkite. 2 questions. One has to do with cost. I'm a little confused on the cost. I understand that the money will come mostly from neighbourhood matching grants, and that's great. I also understand that the maximum there is $20,000. Appreciating the fact that depending on which kind of program we're into, would we be able to give up to $20,000 in way of a matching grant on this kind of proposal?
Mr. Cronkite? Oh, sorry. Here we go.
I'll respond to that.
Mr. Croft.
Thank you. Referring to the neighborhood matching grant, it's actually $15,000 is the maximum for any one project. And again, because it's a matching grant, that would mean that one single project could be up to $30,000, which is more than enough for any of the projects that are on this stream.
Okay. And both of my questions relate to not frustrating residents who want to take advantage of what I can see as an excellent program. I noticed that our figures, as part of this program, we would have to get a response from 60% of residents, 75% of immediate neighbors. Considering the fact the previous item, we seem to have a lot of difficulty getting response from people, meaningful response. Are these figures a little high compared to what we usually deal with in other projects?
Mr. Cronkite?
Through you, Madam Chair. This is a very distinctly different approach to that communication. So the numbers that you've seen in our previous communication is regarding a survey, and so it's simply staff sending a letter out to the neighborhood, them responding to that letter. With this approach, neighbors, anyone that were to pick this up and want to lead this initiative would essentially need to go door to door to their neighborhood or to their neighbors, talk about the design, talk about the program that they want to do, and get their signature in that sense. So I don't see those numbers as being unreasonable simply because they're going to be having that face-to-face interaction. Right. So when they're having that interaction, it's simply a signature.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, I'd be prepared to move this when the time comes, and I also have comment when that time comes.
Okay, thank you. Noted. Councillor Gallery-Seelock.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. I'll start with my second one just because it follows up on the percentages with regards to the minimum support. Especially for something like the signs, you could put those up on your own without anybody, so like the Kids at Play sign, you could put those up on your own without really talking to anybody. Is that correct?
Mr. Cronkite?
Through you, Madam Chair, they would, without a program like this, they would still be susceptible to the sign bylaw.
Right, so if they put it on their own property, it would be fine.
In theory, yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Cronkite, if you could just stay clicked in, that would be helpful. Go ahead. Do you have a second question?
No, I'm just concerned with some of the percentages, understanding like that they'll be able to get to the residents and to their neighbors. That's fine. I kind of want to keep an eye on that one to make sure that it's not being limiting what can happen in a community. I understand if there's a lot of opposition, then it might not be something to move forward with, but people are sometimes fear change, so I guess I want to ask why these percentages?
Through you, Madam Chair, these percentages are actually reduced. If you will recall back to when we did the Ahrens and Wilhelm design, we required that all four corners were in favor, so 100% of those directly affected, and 80% in every direction on the block. So what we've done is we've reduced that to 75%, 60% in either direction on the block, and we've put a limit to how long a block face is. So we've maxed that limit out at 100 meters to make sure that we're not that we're targeting the people that are directly affected and that we're getting their input and their buy-in.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. May, you want to comment?
You probably have too many mics.
Sorry, Mr. Croft, can you click out for a moment, and then here we go. Mr. May.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. On this point about the percentages, as Mr. Cronkite said, they are reduced, but I'll be very upfront that there's no science behind the numbers that we're recommending to you today. So I do think this is an issue Council could look at closely, and if you feel comfortable lowering them, then I think that's certainly something we would look to Council to give us direction on.
Okay, I think for now I will go with what's there, but something just, if there's some that are coming forward that aren't proceeding on that basis, that then staff can bring it back to us or to that individual councillor so that we can take a look at it more closely. And then my other question is just with regards to options. I like the options that have been outlined, and I understand that there can be a lot of different options, but where can people go to find those options? Like, are there more, or is there a place we can direct them to? People can be creative on their own, but also giving them that list of things is important too. Is there an opportunity to assist in trying to get more options? Because I see some of these fitting in neighborhoods, but I don't see all of them, like them working on every street. So where do we find more options or ideas?
Through the chair, if I may respond to that one. You'll notice that we created an easy steps guide, and the number one step is for a transportation staff and a community center staff to go and sit down together with residents on site in their neighborhood and explore those potential opportunities. So we really see that as the kind of the first opportunity to look at what are the various options available to them and to come up with the creative solutions that the residents can then take back to their community and start to have those conversations there.
So you see it as like the residents just saying, I have a concern, and then you set up a meeting versus, I'd like to implement this idea?
Through the chair, residents would need to understand that they are going to be part of the solution. This is not a program where they can just register a concern and then staff will take it from there. So as long as they're willing to be a part of that solution and continue to develop the project, that first initial meeting would be the key intake opportunity to explore options. Right.
Okay. So what I'm trying to drive at is they're not limited to the options that you've outlined in page 4-3. I'm trying to drive at, are there more options we can, float out there so people can wrap their brain around things that can happen?
Mr. Cronkite?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Within the Easy Steps guide that has been created, there are online examples as well. Okay. Resources, Google's a wonderful thing. So if you type in resident traffic calming, there are an infinite number of ideas that come up. One of my favorite examples is bollards in the shape of sheep. that they've installed in the UK. So a quick Google search will give them some ideas as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, and Mr. May, would you like to comment?
Yeah, and through you, Madam Chair, I just remind Council of another recommendation of the Love My Hood strategy, which is the creation of a dedicated neighborhood website that will be an inventory of ideas so that residents who have a problem with traffic on their street can go to that website and see cool things that are happening either in our city or even beyond our city. So there'll be a source for them to get ideas.
So if we see a cool sheep-shaped bollard, then do we have to wait for a resident to bring that forward, or can we just add it to the website beforehand?
A big part of the website is this concept of inventory of ideas, and so it will be spurring creativity. So people will go and see it and go, yeah, I want to do the sheep idea.
Sure, okay. Thank you. So I just want to make note here that we have 3 people in the queue, Councillor Singh, Councillor Fernandez, and Councillor Gazzola. In that order is how they clicked in, FYI. But we also have a delegate, and so I'd like to keep that list on the side and invite our delegation to come forward in case we have information from her that might answer some of the questions we have. Okay, so thank you. Leslie Maxwell, please introduce yourself and your role.
Sure, I'm Leslie Maxwell. I work with Student Transportation Services, is this loud enough? Of Waterloo Region. I'm a school travel planner, and my job is to reduce traffic in front of schools and get more kids to walk and cycle to school. To that end, this project is very important to me because it really helps residents love their neighborhood and use their streets. So when I'm working towards creating better and safer routes to school, one of the ideas that I keep in mind is how to make that route more interesting. Because if we can make it more interesting, then more people are apt to walk it than to drive it. So these projects, especially when they're resident-led, the problems are identified by residents, the solutions are identified by residents, they're owned by residents. Residents are going to use them. They're going to want to send their children to school down those paths. And because they take into account the whole community, not just in front of the school, then we're talking about kids who are walking from a distance from school in. So even though they're not maybe abutting a school property, that's not my interest. My interest is in creating better communities that feel safer, that look safer, that are safer, so that more children can walk to school. Because these are resident-led that way, it is nice that they own them, but this project in particular is also keenly interesting because the city guides that work so that we know that the work is uses best practices, that it follows any AODA kind of guidelines, and that it uses quality construction, quality workmanship, so that we know it won't lead to greater dangers, but rather just greater safety all along. So I'm in favor of the numbers that have been proposed, just as an aside, and I think that it would maybe behoove you to revisit that later on, but at the same time, those numbers being high for resident buy-in means that you'll have more residents who are aware of what's happening and why it's happening, and they may be more apt to actually use those streets. So I think that's about all I have to say.
Okay, so let me just see first before you sit back down if there are any questions for you.
Sure.
Can I just see a show of hands because there are some people already clicked in. Is there any questions? Okay, so Ms. one question. Okay, for Ms. Maxwell? Okay, Councillor Ioannidis?
Yeah, I just wanted to I guess give council, our committee, a little update on what Ms. Maxwell's role is, and if committee can remember, about a year and a half ago, when we approved the position at the school board, that we were partnering in with the school board, and I've been working with Ms. Maxwell on one of the projects right now around Sandhills with concerns with traffic and around the neighborhood, and so far, some of the stuff that I've seen that we've worked with and everything else has been quite amazing, and I'm glad you're here.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Maxwell. All right, so back to questions of staff. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to touch upon what Councillor Galway-Seelock was saying, and I agree with her absolutely in context of additional support. So I think part of that question has been answered, but it's more of a comment at this point, and seeing that I do see a measure of us giving ideas and also giving certain level of direction to encourage, for people to take this upon themselves. For the question I do have with that is, we'll be focusing a part of the hand guide. Will it focus on materials or that are more durable in our climate, so that longevity of that project, so as opposed to them having to redo year after year?
Mr. Cronkite?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes. When we meet with the residents that are considering these options, especially when we're talking about paint, we need to make it very clear what products they can use. And additionally, depending on the roadway that we're talking about, we'll outline to them what it means in terms of maintenance or potential fading. That's all part and parcel to the overall program in that initial meeting, that those discussions will take place.
Great. And you referenced two other projects. When were they put in? Especially the one that's on screen right now, the Walking on Sunshine?
So the Walking on Sunshine, the decorative crosswalk is a thermoplastic material that was installed in 2016.
Okay.
So it's a little bit different. It's not paint. It'll have a longer lifespan.
So it went through a winter already?
It did. The intersection of Aarons and Wilhelm was the other one that was done with your typical road-based paint. It was removed due to reconstruction. We knew that going into the program or going into that design. It was an ideal opportunity to test it out. We knew it had about a 1.5-year life shelf, and then we were going to be removing it. But it held up rather well, too, simply because it's two roadways that have very minimal volume. So ideally, when you're looking at a paint-based product, then you're looking at around 2,000 vehicles a day. Outside of that number, it starts to wear a little bit more prematurely. So this is the information that we'll give the residents when we talk.
And that's where I think that the effort needs to be put on our part as we carry forward in developing this initiative, that we are researching the right materials and having that support outside of what they're able to do and the ideas that they bring forward. The other question I had was for the temporary pop-ups and alternative use of parking spaces. Can you explain a little bit more on what that would be, especially more of the alternative use of parking spaces?
Sure, through you, Madam Chair. So the alternative use of parking spaces, a lot of streets may have an area that's dedicated for parking. You can simply turn that space into something creative and fun. So whether you decided that day you wanted to have a beach party in a parking space, or you wanted to create a seating area, it's meant to just foster creativity.
Before we carry that on, especially when you start playing beach volleyball or having seating on a roadway which has traffic on it, are you specifying where you have markings, parking markings, or just where parking is allowed on a particular street?
When I'm talking about those kind of measures, I'm talking about where it would be defined parking and where we could delineate it appropriately so that those things could happen. In other areas where, when you want to talk about temporary park-ups or pop-ups, we could do an infinite number of things. But essentially, again, as staff's role in this, we'll be guiding them in a direction that we feel is wholly safe in anything that they may want to try.
I just wanted to address that aspect of safety. Again, I'm sure the residents would be enthused on wanting to be creative, but again, we have to use aspect of common sense to some of those measures as well. When we implement, speed calming, traffic calming measures, we usually do a survey a year after. Will we have that type of feedback so that perhaps maybe there wasn't the same level of enthusiasm after a measure is put in that initially was thought of, so that we're getting the right input from the entire street? Will we perform that type of survey a year after?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's exactly what we did with the intersection of Aarons and Wilhelm, the mural painting. That would be Appendix A within this report. I can tell you in that instance that the residents in the neighborhood itself loved the initiative. It was a great success for them. Our intent not only is not only to go back to the residents and make sure that they're still on board, but it's to collect the quantifiable data as well, the before and after studies, so that we as staff know how effective these have been on speed and volume on the street as well.
So to reiterate, there will be a before and after survey.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Fernandez?
Thanks. So this is something I've been waiting for enthusiastically. I know we've had lots of traffic calming discussions in my ward. The focus right now seems to be on the paint, but I think, if I'm understanding correctly, there is a lot more information coming forward on June the 12th. Is that correct understanding?
Through you, Madam Chair, they're very different projects in terms of this, what you have in front of you today, and what will come forward on June the 12th. So this is purely meant to be resident-led, and yes, there is some focus on paint and that type of application, but this is really about resident creativity. What you'll see on June 12th is more seasonal type measures that are infrastructure based that staff will be working with council.
Okay. And I appreciate the responses that you've given to other council about where they're going to garner that information. Because I do think that this guide is very easy to follow, and I'm assuming, maybe I shouldn't, that links to websites might actually be included in this guide. Would that be a good idea? Yeah, I see head nodding.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, those links are within the guide now. There are some.
Yeah, I see that. Okay, that's good. Thank you very much for the work that's happening here, because I think it's important. We hear from the residents. They want us to do something right away, and if we give them the tools, they actually may be able to do some traffic calming that they will see a change within their community rather quickly.
Thank you. Councillor Cazzola.
I'm having trouble wrapping my head around this whole program. Can you tell me what is the main purpose of this program?
The main purpose of this program is to assist those residents that want to see traffic calming in their neighborhood, but otherwise would not qualify for traffic calming. So they then have the ability to take it upon themselves to come up with creative ways to control traffic in their neighborhoods and have a positive impact on their overall community.
So it is primarily to do with traffic calming?
It's a resident-led traffic calming program, so yes.
Yeah. Do we have any, a couple other, can you tell me what kind of staff resources this is going to take?
Through you, Madam Chair, there will be staff resources involved for sure. There is going to be a person from the Neighborhood Development Office that's closely tied to this program, and as well there'll be a transportation services professional that anytime one of these applications come in will be heavily involved as well. In terms of how much staff time it will take, it's impossible to tell until we start seeing some of these applications come in and we start seeing what the measures are. At that point, we'd be able to more clearly identify how much time it will actually take.
Do we have a budget for this program at this time? Do we have any idea of what it's going to cost for resources, for staff? Do we have any idea what this program might cost?
Through you, Madam Chair, we don't foresee any capital cost initially with this program, as it's being funded through Residents in the Neighborhood Matching Grant. In terms of costs related to staff time, again, without knowing what that full allocation of staff time will be for these projects, we really can't define that.
Yeah. Yeah, we keep referring to the matching grant. Well, that's the cost of the community, right? That's taxpayers' money. So there is a capital cost. It's coming from another pot at this time. But so we're going into a program that we have no idea what it's going to cost. I'll move into another. How will we know if the program is being successful or not? What kind of measures are there? Are there any measures?
Mr. May, you'd like to comment?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. I want to respond to the question from Councillor Gazzola about cost, because we do know a lot about what it's going to cost. We've done 2 of these now. We have $60,000 a year within the neighborhood matching grant. Once that runs out in a year, there will be no more projects funded in that year. So that is a way to not only use tax dollars, but also leverage other either private donations or resident donations. So we do have a lot of information on the costs. In terms of the operational costs, Council approved the creation of a neighborhood development office through last year's budget, and part of their role is to oversee and help residents do this type of work. So there are no new operating or capital costs. Both have been built into the budget Council approved.
Fine, thank you. But there is nothing in this report that relates to the actual cost of this program that we're moving into, that you're asking Council today to move into.
Through you, Madam Chair, that's because we need no new approvals. You've already approved the neighborhood matching grant and the operating grant for the staff.
We might have approved them when we didn't know what we were doing.
So if I can ask Councillor Gazzola, do you have any other additional questions?
Yeah, I'm concerned about how we measure the success of this. How do we measure, we're talking about traffic calming. What we've done now, have we been able to measure anything there, and how? I have a problem with if one of the number of the things are paintings at intersections, but how do we deal with speeds on the street? How do they work into the scenario?
Mr. Cronkite.
Through you, Madam Chair, in both of the, I'll call them paint examples, so the Lancaster Street crosswalk and the intersection mural, 85th percentile speeds on the adjacent block went down by 5 kilometers an hour. So not only are they successful from a perception perspective with the overall neighborhood, they were also quantifiably successful in terms of the reduction in speed.
Do you have any details of those? You normally bring that sort of information back to us. I haven't seen anything on that.
The information is contained within the report.
Okay. My final question is, you have a number of criteria here. What happens if the criteria isn't met? Does that mean a project does not go forward?
Mr. Cronkite?
I'm sorry, are you referring to the circulation criteria?
On the middle of page 4-4, yes. The following minimum support be required. What if you don't get that? What happens?
If the minimum support was not met in terms of the neighborhood, we would work with the neighborhood representative to try to garner that support. Should insufficient support not be met, then that project wouldn't move forward.
So criteria really means just you're going to do more work until you meet the criteria. Is that right? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. May, you have a comment?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. In keeping with the, or Madam Chair, sorry, in keeping with the resident-led nature of this program, it is the residents who will need to seek these approvals. If they do not secure the approvals outlined on page 4-4, the project will not proceed.
Okay, thank you. So more questions. We have Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Marsh. Just a question. Earlier, a delegation came in and spoke of speed on Ross Avenue around a bend going to Shantz Lane. Now, they expressed an interest for signage or something to do about that. For example, if they have the concern but they don't quite know what would work, how would they start? Would they talk to our neighborhood office to get some possible ideas to look into?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, that's the first step identified in the Easy Steps Guide, and that's to contact the Neighborhood Development Office, who will work with them to come up with those ideas, should they not have any ideas of their own.
Yeah. So, and you said there will be some ideas for neighborhood-led traffic calming. I'm just wondering, with the website, is it possible maybe to break those into maybe categories like for speed
around a curve, or I don't know, just maybe help them in their search for ideas for that, if that might be, I don't know, possible for that website when we come up with the ideas?
Through the chair, I don't think I'm on here, but...
Okay, Darren?
Yeah, yes, I mean, it is our intention that that website will be searchable among a number of different functions. I would also say that we as staff will continue to collect these stories, hopefully as more of them happen in Kitchener and elsewhere, so we can continue to offer these resources for them.
Okay, and this one might be tough to answer. I know at a recent traffic calming meeting that I was at, that was led by Mr. Cronkite, one of the residents actually stood up and admitted that the people on the street were part of the problem with the speeding. And, you know, with the great results we had here with the Lancaster and Chapel Street and Aarons and Wilhelm Street projects, where the speeds were significantly reduced, do you think getting a neighborhood together for this might create an awareness and a collective responsibility? I don't know if there's any, there's probably no way to quantify that with actual results, but...
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, that's exactly it. So this type of neighborhood-led initiative draws attention to the fact that it really is the neighborhood itself. When it comes to a traffic calming situation, it really is the neighborhood itself that is the biggest culprit. You know, they're the ones using the neighborhood on a regular basis. So when they get involved in this kind of initiative, I'll go back to the example of Aarons and Wilhelm. The speeds weren't very high. They were 48 kilometers an hour, 85th percentile before we painted the intersection mural. But simply bringing attention to those local neighbors that, you know, it was still a concern for some people. It brought the speeds down even more. So it's highlighting that neighborhood to neighborhood and resident to resident interaction. And I think it goes a long way.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you. Mayor Urbanovic.
Thank you very much. Just one question, and I don't know who wants to answer it, but it was just in follow-up to something that Mr. May had said with respect to the percentages on 4.4. And in particular, I guess it speaks to 60% of the neighbors living within the project limits and 75% of the neighbors who live directly adjacent. And those numbers, I guess for me, particularly when, you know, what we're talking about does not have direct impacts like, you know, speed humps and different things like that, seem rather high, quite frankly. I mean, particularly when, you know, when we talk about democracy, I mean, it's typically 50% plus one. And so I'm wondering why those numbers are being suggested. And in fact, could we be looking at lowering those numbers?
Through you, Madam Chair, and this is a conversation that Michael and I had quite often. In terms of why we feel that these numbers are reflective of what we should see is because we want to make sure that we have a clear majority of the neighborhood on board. While I can appreciate in a typical democracy it's 50 plus 1, we want to make sure that the majority of the neighborhood is in fact on board and that what is occurring in the neighborhood is what most of the neighborhood wants to see.
But I guess, you know, this is a little different than how we handle our other processes in the sense that volunteers are going to have to go around and do this work and quite frankly engage people at a higher level than we see for the more significant, impactful traffic calming perspectives. So I'm struggling why in those, you know, given all of those facts, we're keeping that number that high.
Again, these aren't too dissimilar to what we see within our traffic calming policy, which is 50% response, 60% in favor. So this 60% number is fairly similar to that. Keep in mind as well that we are asking that they contact 100% of the affected neighbors. So they're going to have that one-to-one dialogue anyway. And we're talking about them just at that point, as long as they're in favor, collecting a signature so that we're
assured that we can meet those numbers.
Okay, well, and I think you just hit the nail on the head where we seem to be actually asking for a higher level of engagement here than we do for the more impactful traffic calming that involves speed humps and so on. And so in light of that, Madam Chair, when Councillor Etherington brings forward the motion, I'm going to be looking to bring an amendment forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have additional comment, Mr. Carmichael?
Yes, thank you. Through you, the Chair. Just want to point out that the support rates here that we're dealing with here, we're going to be dealing with extremely focused areas. For example, if an intersection mural is put in, we're only going to be dealing with the 4 neighbors on the corners to get that 75%. When we're getting into a full-scale traffic calming review, we're including everybody on the roadway, whereas this is specific to the area that the placemaking is going to be proposed for. So I think it reinforces our desire from a staff level that the people who are going to be directly impacted and immediately in the area are on board. That's a reflection in the requirements we've outlined in the report.
Okay, thank you. As far as I see, there are no further questions, but there may be some comments. I myself have a few additional questions, if I may. So first of all, would it be possible for, once all the residents who are going to be affected by these resident-led traffic calming initiatives are notified, would there be a way for people to provide their consent through email rather than through direct face-to-face contact and then an actual signature?
Through you, Madam Chair, at the end of the day, the residents will be the ones collecting this support, and they'll be bringing it forward to staff. As long as they can clearly identify that they have the minimum requirements, whether they bring it forward through an email or they bring it forward through the formalized petition, that will be sufficient.
Okay, that's helpful. And then in a case like the Aarons and Wilhelm painted intersection, when due to unforeseen circumstances we had to pave over it fairly quickly, what type of permissions are required for the residents in that area to then go back and replace it?
Should the residents want to go back and replace that one specifically, for example, it's been a while, so we would walk through the same process. We knew before that was ever installed that was going to be the case, that it was going to be removed. Before a resident were to indicate that they'd like to continue forward with a project like that, we would make sure that we as staff double check that there weren't anything on the books for that type of infrastructure to occur. The last thing that we want to do is see someone put in all of that effort and then have it removed shortly thereafter. So that'll all be part of the conversation.
Okay. And then I don't see in here any mention of regional roads, but it might be helpful to residents who live on a regional road to know that we don't have jurisdiction over those. Can we add that?
Through you, Madam Chair, yeah, for sure we can add that to the Easy Steps Guide.
Okay, thanks. And then also, as I understand it, we already have in our capital budget $10,000 per year since 2016 for neighborhood-led traffic calming. So we would have an amount that's $20,000. Will that be added now to the neighborhood matching grant fund?
Through you, Madam Chair, no, that's not the case. The 20,000 or the 10,000, the 20,000 that's there now in the capital budget will actually be used towards the small-scale traffic calming, the report that will come forward in June.
Okay.
This is treated completely separate from that.
Okay. And then last question. In a case like the Walking on Sunshine crosswalk, that let's say that had been the result of a neighborhood-led traffic calming initiative. At the end of its lifespan, after 10 years, who pays for the replacement of that if it is not seen to be something that needs to not be replaced? You know what I mean? Like if it's still seen as a needed traffic calming measure, where have you thought it through as to who then would replace it, or how it's paid for?
Through you, Madam Chair, we would ideally like to see it go through the same process at that point. The maintenance would be something that could be funded through the neighborhood matching grant again at that time, but again, we're talking years out, so
it will remain to be seen.
Remains to be seen. Okay, so it would be my question would then be to ask staff to think that one through so that we can have a clear understanding of how much of this budget is going to be for replacing future initiatives that would need to be then replaced rather than brand new initiatives in other neighborhoods that also need it. Thank you. All right, next, Councillor Etherington, would you like to bring forward your motion?
Sure, and I have a comment. Which do you want first, Madam Chair?
How about your motion?
Okay, well, my motion would be, as with the report, I would move this recommendation from staff that Council approve the commencement of the resident-led traffic calming program.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to make your comments now or at the end?
Yeah, my comment is that I quickly comment. I mean, we've got a situation here with 175 on a list of areas requesting traffic calming. We're only able to do 3 a year. I think this is by far the largest neighborhood and taxpayer complaint that I hear about, and probably most councillors hear about. In the past election, I counted 6 streets in my ward alone where people were giving me an earful about speeding traffic and wanting traffic calming. So I think, as I've already said, it's an excellent program, an excellent way of reducing that 175. And quite honestly, I can't believe that any councillor faced with that massive outcry about speeding traffic could ever oppose this kind of move. So let's get on with it.
Thank you, Councillor Etherington. Mayor Vodanovic, you have an amendment.
I do, and I'm just writing it out, but basically on 4-4, it would change the numbers to that 50% plus 1 of neighbors living within the project limits and 75% of neighbors. So it would just change the one number from 60% to 50% plus 1, and that would make it consistent with our, essentially what we do with our regular, more impacting traffic calming. In the instance of a particular corner with the 4 properties, that would still mean that 3 out of the 4 would need to comment on it. But quite frankly, in one where there's 20, that would mean that 11 or a majority would need to be part of the consultation, and then we would still have the other number intact.
Okay, thank you. So, so we'll take that amendment and we'll vote on it at the time. Right now we have 4 councillors in the queue for comment. I just want to remind committee that we are running over time, so if we can keep our comments brief, that would be appreciated. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is really exciting. I absolutely love our community when it comes to our neighborhood strategy, now the resident-led, traffic calming measures, the effort that we put into public feedback on initiatives that we consider. We live in a fantastic community, and this is just one extra thing that highlights why this community is as great as it is. I think it gives control to the residents at the street level, that they can prioritize how to make their street safe in their neighborhood. Rather than waiting for City Hall to think of a solution, they can derive and have conversations on their street and think of creative ways of doing it. My comment, again, back to staff would be that we need to ensure that we don't just allow free flow of participation ideas alone. That's necessary, but there needs to be strong support to carry that forward, that one extra step. I think our residents take upon a lot of responsibility and initiative in various different projects, and I'm sure they will in this one as well, but I just want to make sure that we hold up to our side of the responsibility to ensure that whatever support is necessary at the onset and carrying forward is there to help carry this forward. And I think Councillor Etherington said it really well. We have, well over 175 on the list of traffic calming streets that need to be done, and we only have the funding for 3, and there's many streets that will take many years before we get to them. This ensures that if those residents want to do something more immediate, they can get started on this immediately, and that's amazing. Really glad to see this and supportive.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the big criticisms that we hear often when it comes to our traffic calming processes, residents like to feel that we're not engaging them and giving them all the input on what's happening on their street. Even though I don't believe in that, I believe we do an excellent job. But I think what this does is at least it gives us that additional tool for our traffic calming kit that will give the residents a better feel of what's going to happen on their street, and it actually gives them more of the onus. And I think this is a great project, and I want to commend the staff for working on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I didn't have any questions. I think staff did a good job in this report. I'm in agreement. I will support the amendment because I think we need to have a lower barrier of entry. I just wanted to comment that I'm happy to see this because, as Councillor Etherington mentioned, yes, there's 175 streets on this list, but I for one am not really at all a fan of speed bumps. I think in some cases they're a necessary evil, but there's something fundamentally inefficient about creating a street and then going back later and spending what is usually tens of thousands of dollars putting bumps in for the few number of cars that exceed the speed limit, not to mention the issues we have with emergency services and snow clearing, etc. So what we have before us is a community-led, innovative alternative that I think will be much more efficient, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of the results.
Thank you. Mr. Carmichael.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's through you. I just wanted to add for the purposes of sharing information with Council. Yes, we have 175 roadways requested for traffic calming. It's important to note that not all of those roadways are going to warrant a traffic calming review at the end of the day. In fact, I think we're in the neighborhood of 20 to 25 that actually warrant the traffic calming. My point being is this proposed resident-led traffic calming program, along with our impending small-scale traffic calming program, will provide residents, staff, and council with many options to deal with these traffic concerns that might not meet a formal traffic calming review down the road. So we're very supportive of these additional traffic calming programs that we're proposing, and just wanted to clarify that comment because it's been made around the horseshoe a number of times.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Gallery-Sealock.
Yeah, I too am in support of this. I think it's great news as I have been pushing and advocating for more traffic calming, not necessarily with the traditional way that we did it, but I advocated when we used to only do 2 traffic calmings to get 4, and now we're back down to 3, which I think strikes a balance. So I definitely appreciate this report, and I'm happy to support it, but I do believe that we need to continue to provide ideas to residents, because I think some will be hesitant to just come forward and say, I want traffic calming. I think they need to kind of have an idea of what they'd like to see, or ideas of what's possible within this, so that they can feel ownership and feel the ability to move forward and feel passionate behind it. So I think it's important for us to continue to gather those ideas and have them part of the toolkit when residents are looking for this. I also think it was good to have Leslie here because I think a lot of these can be implemented around schools and can help the school areas and all the problems that we're seeing there. So I think that that's a great perspective. And I think it's a great idea because it brings residents together. So I like this added approach to traffic calming, and I do look forward to the small-scale traffic calming that's going to come forward as well. I think it's going to give us a holistic approach where we can look at different options in order to try and relieve some of the problems of safety concerns on our streets.
Thank you. Mayor Verbanovic.
Thank you. And I'll begin by providing some clarity, because I guess it's the danger of writing and explaining it at the same time, so my apologies to committee for that. But the motion or the amendment was that 60% of neighbors living within the project limits, so it keeps that number intact, but it reduces the directly adjacent to 50% plus one of neighbors who live directly adjacent. So the example that Mr. Carmichael used of the corner would still require 3 out of the 4 people in that particular instance, to be part of it. So that would be my amendment. Speaking to the overall motion, I'm very pleased to see staff bringing this issue forward. As we know, and I remember from my time as a ward councillor, the issue of traffic calming is probably one of the things that you hear about the most as ward councillors. And the process to get traffic calming mechanisms in place, along with the costs associated with them, makes it difficult for us to do much more than we are doing. But we know that there are tools available that can help impact neighborhoods in a positive way. We've seen that in the neighborhoods where we have piloted them so far. And I think this report will allow us to tackle more of that, address neighborhood concerns, and most importantly, and we heard from the school board in that regard, add to the walkability in our neighborhoods, which I think is extremely important and something we want to encourage, particularly if we can amongst young people going forward.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fernandez.
Thank you. I'm just a little bit concerned, Mr. Mayor, about the 50+1, because I think that the reason our staff chose a higher number is because quite often this kind of initiative can create a little bit of tension in a neighborhood. And if we have a little bit higher percentage of support, just having the onus on one person is pretty intense. So I'm not going to support the amendment, and so I'm wondering if we need to pull the amendment out of the voting, because I don't want to affect the voting of the overall recommendation.
For sure, we'll vote on the amendment and then
independently
the motion.
I think we have to recognize that it's going to be neighborhood-led, and neighbors talking to neighbors can sometimes be a bit tense and can be a bit fraught with some challenges. And in making sure that we have a higher majority in support of these traffic calming measures led by the neighbors, we need to make sure that more people are on board, because we want them to feel that what they're saying is important. And I think that's what we've tried to do in the balance in this report. I also really respect the fact that we've chosen a maximum distance of 100 meters. I think that's very important. And I think it's also good to see that we'll be adding, whether it's in the Easy Guide, the regional roads that we have no jurisdiction over. I think that's critical. The school safe routes to school. I met with Leslie last week about a school that's opening up soon, and identifying safe routes to schools through neighborhood-led traffic calming is probably one of the best ways to do it, because they're the ones who are seeing it every single day. Notwithstanding you guys have your expertise, but the people who are walking with their kids, they're seeing what's happening on the streets. So this is a really perfect dovetail within our Safe Routes to School program, our student transportation planner being here, and I think we've got some really good work to move ahead on neighborhood-led traffic calming.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzola.
Yes, thank you. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be supporting this recommendation that's before us, and I know several councillors have said already, how can you not support this? I specifically asked if this is a project to deal with traffic calming. I'm totally in support of whatever we can do and what we have done in the past with traffic calming. I don't see that this deals with the issue. I'm concerned with approving a program that we have no idea what the costs involved are or will be. We have no budget. We're going into something that really sounds great, and it does sound good and all that, but we really aren't sure where we're going with it. I asked for some information as to whether what we've done has really shown any changes, and I was referred to the report, but the report only deals with perceptions of people in the neighborhood. Do we have any statistics prior to what we've done in these areas to compare with what we have today? We don't have any of that information. So I'm not opposed to traffic calming. It is a serious problem. We're all guilty of traveling too fast in our communities. I'm as guilty as the next person. I'm not sure that I know that from what I've seen in our city that the traffic humps do work. There are a lot of streets that have a number of them, and they do work, and they've shown, well, there's one coming up later today that we're dealing with where it shows has been considerable improvement. I'm just not sure that this program that we're looking at will accomplish that. And for that reason, I won't be supporting it at this time. Of course, I have another whole week before this is ratified, and perhaps I can be convinced of my error. Thank you.
Thank you. Staff, do we have any indication that when there is resident-led traffic calming that we will have a pre and post a measurement?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes. Every time one of these are undertaken, our intent is to collect before and after data. As an aside, as I had mentioned earlier, both the Lancaster Street crosswalk and intersection mural resulted in an 85th percentile reduction of 5 kilometers per hour.
Thank you. Okay, comments, Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Marsh. Thank you, staff, for this excellent report. I think it's a great program, especially when our citizens take the lead on it. As has been said by other councillors, it's when you campaign, it's one of the first things you hear, and you hear it more often than anything. In the report, there are examples of how this neighborhood-led traffic calming has reduced the speed. So I don't know how one can say you support traffic calming and not support this, so I'm proud to support it.
Thank you. That's all the comments we have. So we'd like to first, I'm going to guess we have a recorded vote requested. Okay, so Clerk, if we could have a recorded vote, please, on the amendment first. It's now not in front of me. But I think we've all read it. Please vote on the amendment. Okay, all in favor, please rise. All opposed? And that carries. Now we're going to also have a recorded vote on the main motion. As amended. Thank you. All in favor? All opposed? That carries. Thank you. All right, moving on, let's look at item number 5, the McLennan Park Great Lawn Remediation Design and Construction. Councillor Singh.
I was going to try to make this point later on when I would have been chairing my committee, but I thought I'd just mention it here as well. It's just helpful after a long duration to take a bit of a break. We're about 2.5 hours in. Just many of us on council, or some of us on council at least, have some back-related issues. It's just then easier to retain the information and discussion. It's just to be more fresh. So
Sure,
if
of
I
course.
can move that, just a 5-minute break.
I always appreciate a short break after a long discussion. I just don't know if we're pressed for time-sensitive topics in the next meetings. We are.
It can be a 2-minute then.
Yeah, clerk, is that okay? Okay, so 2-minute break, please.
Thank you.
I would ask everyone to please be seated. We're going to recommence our meeting. We have 2 more items to get through, and no presentations as I understand it, so it would only be questions of staff. Okay, do we have Ms. Who will be answering questions of staff for item number 5, McLennan Park Great Lawn? Okay, so if you want to, at the appropriate time, just click in. All right, so is Ms. McGoldrick on her way back? Okay, great. All right, so let's begin with our questions of staff. Councillor Galloway Seelock.
Yeah, I'm just, I guess, flabbergasted at the price tag that's attached to this, understanding that the region is going to be doing part of the work and we're going to be doing the other part. Can you explain where the bulk of the $1 million is, what it's going towards?
Through the chair, the bulk of the costs are for the stripping of the site, replacing the topsoil layer, putting in an additional drainage layer, and then reseeding the site. Additional dollars are also allocated towards additional tree planting, pathways, and an additional picnic shelter.
Right. So those are much more minor costs, which I have no problem with those. Why is the region not? Because we paid to initially have the lawn done to our specifications. They're responsible for what's underneath. It's what's underneath that's causing the problem. So why are they not the ones doing the rehab back to the state that we had it before the problem occurred?
Through Madam Chair, we do have a cost-sharing arrangement where the region is actually supporting some of the costs for the topsoil and the seeding as well. The bulk of their costs are towards the clay cap improvements.
But if it's their issue that caused the problem, is that correct? That's why the wood chips are on there. That's why we're having to take everything out. That's why is that correct?
Through the chair, we're actually dealing with a combination of things. So the clay cap is one of the issues. Other issues include not having an adequate topsoil base to support turf that can support long events with large usage. So we are actually improving the turf ability as well.
So was this an oversight when we did it the first time?
Through the chair, I wouldn't call it an oversight. I think what we've recognized is the park has had a whole lot of high usage, probably more than we anticipated originally. The original topsoil that was there was problematic for supporting turf growth with the usage that it got. So this is an opportunity to improve it.
So the usage that you're talking about, is it purely the big music fest that was held there?
Through the chair, no general park use as well as large events.
What else general park use? Because I'm there quite often, and what other general park use other than the play structure, splash pad, that kind of stuff on the Great Lawn is concerning?
The Great Lawn is used for a lot of spillover for the playground and the splash pad. It's used for picnic events in the weekend and that. So we do see a lot of usage that is affecting to support turf on a regular basis.
But it wouldn't be different than any of our other parks from the usage perspective. Like, would we not have anticipated that kind of use when we did it the first time?
Through the chair, it's a good point. I think what we have found is we've had some learning lessons as far as the topsoil that was used at the time, and it was the existing topsoil. So when we developed the park originally, we were trying to be very economical. We reused existing topsoil. We didn't include a drainage base or an irrigation system. So through those learning lessons, we want to move forward with a better product in the long run.
Okay, so in the end, it is kind of, some of that was oversight to some degree.
Ms. McGoldrick, you want to comment additionally?
Through you, Chair. Actually, Dan summed it up there quite nicely in the end, so I don't have anything substantial to add other than it is a unique project in that it's a former landfill with park use on top, so there is an additional degree of complexity associated with the surface works and the interaction between the surface and the landfill itself. So that's part of the decision making in terms of the cost split.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you want to know what, I've supported this park since the get-go, been an advocate for this park. So my concern is just purely, did we do it right? Is it our responsibility? I'm supportive of the park. As I said, I get a lot of use from it. So I think it's going to be a huge, I guess my one last question would be, there is absolutely zero possibility or ability to keep more of that park open during the work?
Through the chair, we've been working with the project team on trying to have as much of the park available for summer use and also respect kind of the safety concerns that would around a construction site. So we've looked at that possibility. The one possibility we've also looked at is the potential of working with the contractor and maybe phasing some of the work so that we can maybe open the area up around the splash pad and playground a little earlier. That's discussions we have to have with the contractor still.
I think that's important, and I just want to say if we do go that route, that it would be really important to communicate that to the community, because right now it's saying it's closed, but if it is going to be open, I think it's important to communicate that. So thank you.
Okay. Councillor Gazzola.
The first question I have is, why are we dealing with this today? Why did we not hear about this prior to this. Now all of a sudden we're going to deal with it, and 10 minutes later we're going to ratify it. There's no opportunity in between something coming to us for any thought or any comments from our constituents, what have you. Why?
Ms. McGoldrick?
Through you, Madam Chair. I hear your point, Councillor Gazzola. It is a very tight turnaround time. With the tender award and both municipalities, both the region and the city, requiring award of the tender, it's a bit of a two-step and a quick turnaround time in terms of the decision. We did, through the design process, there was costing, and we pulled out elements of the design that we felt were additional amenities that exceeded the budget, and those were the provisional items. However, when we received the tender price, it came in over budget.
Has this been passed by the region? Did you deal with it and ratify it on the same day? Well, then why here?
Mayor
Okay,
Verbanovic, do you want to?
No, my time's running. I want to use my time. I'm losing all of it here. What happens if we turn this down? We don't approve this tender. A tender that's 60% more than we had planned for. What happens?
If council chooses not to move forward, then the region cannot award the tender to the contractor, and the project would be delayed past this season.
We've been in this state for some time now. How really has this affected us? Has it affected the community? Can we, if we had to, could we not go a few more years with the condition, with the state that it's in now? If we really had to.
Through the chair,
priorities.
It's a good question, and I think we've heard a lot of public kind of backlash on when are we going to get on with this. So we've heard a lot of comments regarding we need to repair the Great Lawn. You know, we can't be sitting on it long enough. We've probably heard criticism that we have sat on it for a long time.
I haven't heard any.
Councillor Gazzola, do you have additional questions?
Yes, I do.
Okay, well, there will be time for comment as well.
Okay. I would like to know what additional amenities we're dealing with. You deal with it briefly, but it seems to me that a lot of the overrun is going to be used to pay for additional amenities.
Through the chair, we do have provisional items identified in the tender of approximately $190,000. Those provisional items include an additional picnic shelter, a loop trail system, a potential relocation of the fence, construction fence, should we be able to.
I apologize for interrupting,
sure.
But why would you put these in here now when we're already over budget? Could these things not wait for another time?
Through the chair, these are items that we've been hearing from the community as additional requests to improve the Great Lawn, and through the economies of scale on doing the construction now, it makes sense to bring them forward.
Okay, this is not a neighborhood park, right? This is a community park.
This is a citywide park.
It affects all the wards. It has nothing to do with one particular ward. Okay, thank you. Oh, just one. You said seeding, so you're not going to sod this area. We're talking seeding.
Correct, we're going to seed it.
Okay, Councillor Singh.
Yeah, with all due respect, Councillor Gazzola, the question of asking could we just leave the park the way it is brings 2 points to my mind. Either you haven't been to the park.
Is this a question of me or a comment?
It's my 5 minutes. It's related to the question you asked, and my question will come afterwards. But I think I want to make this point. I could have called a point of order at that point. I didn't. Out of respect, I wanted to say what you wanted to say. I allow you that time. But saying that, allowing 2 more years, again, I want to make that point. Either you haven't seen the condition of the park the way it is, and I'll let staff describe it in maybe greater detail how that area looks, or perhaps you just don't care how our citywide parks look like.
Councillor Singh.
They are completely relevant comments. I'll allow staff to describe the current condition of the park, and at that point, everyone else can decipher if what I'm saying is correct or not. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm the Councillor Gazzola. You have mentioned a point of order because your name was mentioned.
Well,
do you want to make a brief comment, or shall we allow staff to answer the question?
Well, as am I.
Okay, so if we can just maintain, I think probably everybody's ready for lunchtime, but we have additional people in the queue, and if we can maintain the level of civility that we are accustomed to, that would be appreciated. So the question has been asked to please describe the current state of the Great Lawn.
Through Madam Chair. So back in 2014, we removed some drainage tile in the park, and as a result, a lot of the sodded area was disturbed. In addition, because it was disturbed, and rather than having a mud hole there, we brought in loads of bark mulch. That bark mulch was spread on the Great Lawn and encompasses about 2/3 of the area. The bark mulch is now starting to decompose. So actually kind of walking on the lawn area or using the lawn area, you don't have a lawn area to walk on, so it's actually not very comfortable for walking.
Okay, thank you.
I think you're putting it fairly lightly when you say not comfortable for walking. Would it be fair to say that parts of the Great Lawn area, it just water is pooling in that in those spots, and it's muddy, and you've already referenced the wood chips that have been decaying. When were the wood chips brought in?
I believe in 2014 or 15. I'm not sure exactly.
14. So it's been, with this summer, it would have been 3 years that those wood chips were brought in. And since then, they have been decaying. Would you say that the Great Lawn area is very unsightly at this point, the way it looks?
I would say that. I think the other point is because it's a landfill, we've also had differential settlement. So the grade is starting to become irregular as well.
Under the lowest standards in staff's assessment, could this area be kept the way it is carrying forward for perhaps another year or a few years, as had been suggested by another council member?
Through the chair, staff would not recommend keeping it in this condition.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Singh, while you have your mic on, as the ward councillor, are you interested to move this motion?
Yes, please, of course. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Parts of the park, obviously, will not be accessible because of the construction that will be taking place. You already made point that you will work with the contractor. The biggest item, I think, that's receiving a lot of pushback from the citywide residents, I'd say, is a splash pad, which is really well used. So you can't say in certainty if that is going to be feasible or not, to have work done around that area first so that that could be brought back online.
Through the chair, you're absolutely correct. The splash pad is the number one concern we're getting right now about the closure. We don't want to build expectations that we can possibly open the splash pad because we will be at the mercy of the contractor on their scheduling. We will work with the contractor to see if that area can be done first. If that is possible, we do have a provisional item to move the construction fence and open up the area around the splash pad and the playground.
When would you know with more certainty if that's going to be possible or not?
I think at best that's going to be midsummer to know that. It's unlikely we would have a splash pad for the entire summer. At best it would be, in the best case scenario, it would be the later half of the summer.
Later half of the summer, okay. Can I just make a recommendation that be brought back as a update to committee or council, letting us know if that is feasible and if that will be taking place? And I agree with Councillor Galloway's comment that it should be communicated out if that change were to happen. The other closure is, Madam Chair, can I just have a little bit of extension here?
Go ahead.
The off a block line entrance into the park. Now the work is taking place on the Great Lawn area, but you still have the entranceway. What's the restriction there? Is it just for the vehicles going in and out that are required for the?
Through Madam Chair, there will be a lot of construction construction equipment moving in and out of the park. Block line entrance will be the main access point for that construction vehicle. So you'll see a lot of dump trucks moving in and out, and for public safety, we'll close that entrance.
Now, there's a trail that goes it's kind of to one side off a block line and goes straight up, not towards the gazebo, but goes straight, and then you can loop back towards the park as well. Will that trail still be open?
Through Madam Chair, that's the trail on the west side of the park from Blockline Drive, and it moves up towards the Hydro Corridor. That trail will also be part of the construction area, as it will be improved with paving as well, so that will be closed. Residents can walk on the outside of the construction fence along that side, but they will not have the trail or an accessible route to use at that end of the park.
So there will be no accessible route or trail or roadway going into the park from Blackhorn?
Not from Blockline.
Okay, all right. I had some more questions.
Excellent, thank you. All right, Councillor Yanetsky.
Yeah, thank you. In your report, and as well as your comments here, that part of the park would be closed, splash pad and a few other facilities, and other areas will still be open, the dog park and basketball courts and the skateboard park, etc. Of those that will be closed versus those that will be open, what percentage of the public would be affected by the closures? Because certain components are more popular than others.
Through Madam Chair, I don't have those numbers. We do see a lot of use for the splash pad and the playground during the summer, but there's other amenities at the park that are highly used as well, like the dog park.
Okay. I know it would be a hard question to guess. I thought it was more of a gut feeling that you can sort of anticipate, whatever. In the report, the total cost of this whole thing is $2.6 million. The city's portion is a certain portion. Yet when I look at the tenders call, it comes in at 2.2, and it's less than the total project. So how come we're asking for more money when Gate and Malloy has got the lowest tender, and it looks to me that it qualifies?
Mr. Hagee?
Through you, Mr. Chair, or Madam Chair, on page 5.3, right under the tender award, so you see Gate and Malloy, as you noted, is $2.2 million. The paragraph right underneath that describes how it gets to 2.6. So it includes the price for Gate and Malloy plus other items, so associated design fees and whatever. So the majority of the contract is what goes to Gate and Malloy. There's still some additional administrative type costs that need to be included as far as the whole project goes.
Yeah, and I see that, but I didn't understand how that all blends together, which I thought still qualifies. I mean, I didn't understand it, I guess.
So the tender, to be clear, the budget ask for the city is for our share of the total project, but only a portion of that is going to the contractor doing the work.
Okay.
The majority is, but it's not the whole amount.
That's right. So if we approve this today, then it's more of goes back to the region and everything's okay, because it was mentioned that the region's already approved it. If we turn this down, then you indicated that it probably won't proceed till this year. Is that correct? Is that my understanding?
Yeah, through the chair, we'd be back to the drawing board.
Okay, so if it does not proceed, let's say it gets turned down, does not proceed, could there be direction then that it be retendered out again via the region?
Through the chair, that could be the case.
Okay. In the report also talks about that the extra money that will be found in related tree planting, turf rehabilitation, community trail capital accounts, and they're shifting budgets around. Is that correct?
Through the chair, we've looked for availability in those capital accounts that could be allocated towards McLennan Park. For example, the hydro tree planting donation, we're allocating towards McLennan Park for additional trees anyways.
So this is coming just from those other accounts that cover the entire city or specific projects? Because I'm just wondering what's going to affect my ward in terms of stuff being removed.
Through the chair, what we've done is we've looked for capacity where we wouldn't be impacting current projects. We've also looked at what would make sense as far as for example, we have trail work in McLennan Park. We're looking at additional trail network in McLennan Park. So we're looking at the comparable general trails provision to support that work. Same with tree planting. We're looking at our tree planting budgets to support some of the tree planting in McLennan Park.
So those other areas that you're removing them from will be deficient then for the rest of the year?
Correct. We're not looking to defer any current projects.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Fernandez.
So certainly the condition of the Great Lawn is very concerning, and we've had probably one of the wettest springs going. The decomposition would have been increased. I'm sorry, the wording just doesn't cover it. It would have been sped up by all the rain that we've had, basically.
Correct, and with warmer weather happening, that'll increase even faster.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot in the last few weeks about neighborhood participation and matching grants and those kind of things. And I know that a shade structure and shade issue on McLennan Park has been identified for a number of years. Is there any opportunity, and it would have been great if you guys had been able to maybe, because you did break out in the funding, how you were going to fund it. But you've added a number of other components to the work. It would have been great if you'd been able to maybe break out, what is the picnic shelter, what is the trees, and you're saying you're doing some additional trails. Is there any thought to, maybe deferring some of the work? And yes, I understand the whole economies of scale. We're in there anyways, let's get this done. Anything that we could defer, or is there anything that we could use, set aside, either some of the tree planting, which people love to do as part of our neighborhood, Love Thy Hood, or the picnic shelter, which I know I've had residents talk to me about. Is there any parts of that we could maybe pull out and once the bigger work is done, have neighborhood groups do something like that?
So should council decide, we have set up the tender with provisional items in it. Approximately 192 or 96,000 are provisional items. They include the loop pathway, the picnic shelter, relocation of the construction fence if we can, and a few other minor items.
So, Dan, I just want to make sure I understood. 192,000? Was that the number you gave me?
Just shy of 197,000.
Sorry, the mayor just coughed and I couldn't hear you at the same time.
Oh, sorry, it's just shy of 197,000 of provisional items.
Just shy of 197,000.
Not including HST.
Okay. So you're saying that we could pull some of that work out and defer it until the majority, because I think the biggest thing is we've got to get that lawn back up to snuff. If we can defer some of that, I mean, it's not going to make a big difference in the whole total cost. But is that something that is doable and staff would agree with?
Through Madam Chair, I think the number one comment we've heard is the park needs additional shade. Mm-hmm. It needs additional accessibility. So those were identified as provisional items in the tender, and through economies of scale, we think it's a good time to do it. We also think that we want to give back to the community at a point where they've seen the Great Lawn in disarray for a couple of years, and that this would be a good opportunity to do it.
Certainly, I think I agree with you on that. I think that residents who live adjacent to that are kind of fed up with the condition of the area right now.
Before we move on, Ms. McGoldrick, you have additional comment?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Just one additional consideration that we've discussed as part of the provisionals is the disruption during construction. And so by deferring some of the elements, be it trails, trees, or shade structure, we would see additional disruption within the area in
Okay, I can appreciate that. Okay, I guess my only concern is, and it's a selfish concern from my perspective as a ward councillor, and possibly from other ward councillors, is when we're taking money from our tree planting capital account, our trails, that other wards will be deficient in work that may have been done or may have been planned to be done this year. That's more of a comment. I apologize, but did I understand that you said that that's not the case?
Through the chair, recognizing that this is a citywide park, so I think it does affect all wards. We haven't. We've looked at potential budget opportunities that won't affect any current projects.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for your responses.
Thank you. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And provisional items have been touched upon, so I'll just kind of focus on that a little bit. Right now, the way the park is designed, pedestrian traffic coming off of Blockhorn, those coming along, they would be commandeering around vehicular traffic. There is no trail that leads into the park.
Through Madam Chair, currently there is a trail on the west side that goes up to the Hydro Corridor.
That's right.
And then there's a trail that goes to the gazebo from Blackhorn.
Right, but I'm talking about where the entrance is coming into the park off of Blockhorn. There's no trail along that entranceway along the where the parking is situated, halfway point as well.
Correct. There is no trail along the driveway entrance.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the trail that's proposed is along the driveway entrance, the additional trail that's proposed.
Yes, we have two trails proposed that loop the entire Great Lawn, and one of the trails does go parallel along the existing driveway entrance off Blockline.
And it's a fair length of that leading into the park. It would probably be a significant part of that cost for the additional trails that are being proposed. So that's an aspect of safety as well, on top of, I guess, additional measure to the park and a better connectivity of the trail network in the park as well.
We see it as both an accessibility and a safety issue.
Okay. The other component is the shading. Now there's going to be berms along the park that would allow for tree planting of more mature trees as opposed to saplings the way it was done a couple of years ago, trees that probably didn't take foothold. Can you explain on that?
Through Madam Chair, one of the learning lessons we had with the original design of the park is that 6 inches of topsoil can't support large stature trees because trees aren't allowed to grow into the clay cap or they interfere with the clay cap. So what we've done in this design is we've increased the topsoil depth in the Great Lawn, and we've also increased the topsoil depth for tree planting areas by creating large berms.
Right, because again, the trees that were planted in previous years, they're not really providing any benefit to the park as shade, or they're not really maturing the way that we would have expected.
Through Madam Chair, the trees that are there now will never achieve full maturity. They'll be stunted trees.
Okay, and so the other component is for shade structure closer to the playground. And you've said it, this is probably, I can say, at least for myself, being the councillor that represents that area, that I've heard significant feedback saying that that's a missing amenity in the park. Have staff heard directly as well as concern for shade around the play structure and splash pad?
Through Madam Chair, I think that's been the number one request we've had is to have some sort of shade structure by the splash pad and playground.
When we have a large park such as McLennan Park, typically there's a provisional. I would have hoped that there was a provision item to or a funding source year after year that could I guess fix or account for the deficits that were missed out of the master plan. That wasn't the case. There hasn't been an item attached to McLennan Park where there's ongoing funding towards the park, right?
Through the budget processes over the last few years, we've tried to introduce a general provision for McLennan Park. Right now we have a small, modest general provision of $25,000 per year for McLennan Park to do capital improvements.
And it's typical that for a large district park to have ongoing improvements as we hear feedback from the community?
Through Madam Chair, yes, particularly with a park that we know we're going to have infrastructure improvements over the years. We've got a landfill that will settle over the years. We will have to do ongoing improvements. We'll have to do ongoing life cycling of features in the park. At some point, we will have to come back to council and seriously address the general provision for McLennan Park.
Okay. Mr. Hagee, do you have additional comment?
Sure. I just want to comment about the budget. The general provision does get money from development charges, so part of the reason it is small is because that funding is in competition with all of the other outdoor recreation items like sports fields, trails, all the other parks across the city. So there is some funding for it, but essentially if we were to increase that funding and try to get more from development charges, we would have to take it from somewhere else. And so the priority is based on what council set through the leisure facility master plan update last time.
I appreciate that, and I think the clarification speaks to the point I was making through my question, that there hasn't been a provision where funding can be allocated year over year that would have spoken to some of the deficits that have been outlined by park goers, like shading, like better for aspect of accessibility and safety for a better trail network as well. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
I have just a quick question. The loop trail that you're proposing to put in, would that function like a walking track, and can we promote it that way?
Madam Chair, correct. That's exactly the intent.
Okay, that's great. I think because I've heard about walking tracks needing more of them, so I think that that's perfect. Thank you. That's my question.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Singh, you've had 2 kicks at the can for the questions. Is this comment?
Yes.
Excellent.
Is for comments?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Madam Chair, so I'm glad to move this motion, and finally it's before us. And before I start, I want to quickly, I apologize, Councillor Gazzola, if you took exception to my opposition to your suggestion that this park could perhaps stay the way it is for a few additional years. I can completely respect my colleagues' further inquiry and criticism or questions of the higher budget item. I have no issue if members of council think that the provisional items aren't necessary, or perhaps the extra measures that are being anticipated for the Great Lawn area, which is a lot more topsoil. It's not necessary. Perhaps if the region were just to do their part, re-sod, that's it. That's an okay criticism as well. Where I do take issue, and it's not with you, Councillor Gazzola, but just in that type of, rationale or thinking, that we leave a park such as this, which is one of our district parks, the size of the park that it is, the amenities that it can offer and does, being the largest, I think, district park that we have in our city, that we are okay with these standards, that we're comfortable with the park looking the way it does, and that reflects poorly on us as a city. And I think I said this just in an earlier item, saying I love this community because of the efforts that we take in community engagement, in aspects of involving our residents into the decision-making process of how this community is shaped and formed. Well, this is that very same thing. This is a district park that provides amenity and to all park goers throughout the whole city, not just Ward 6 residents. It's not just a neighborhood issue, it's a citywide issue. And we have to be reflective that we owe it as a responsibility. It's unfortunate the cost, but we owe it as a responsibility to our citizens that this park looks the way it should, the way it was intended through the master plan. And I think the additional provisional items that staff have rightly so outlined speak to efficiencies of scale, of doing works that may or most likely, absolutely in my opinion anyways, are necessary soon enough. Doing it sooner would allow for lesser costs and no further disruption to the neighborhood as well as the park. If you step back a little bit and just reflect on this, it's been 3 years where an area of a few acres had wood chips spread all across, and those wood chips over 3 years through different winters, rainfall seasons, have gotten muddy, have been decaying, and that's the look of the park right now. There's aspect of smell, so it's not just the optics. There are residents that have emails saying that they're embarrassed that our park can look the way it does, and so we have to be conscious of that. I think this has been a long time coming, and I'm really glad it's here. I wish I had been a couple years ago, just for a quick comment to the committee. Initially, when this happened, the anticipation was the following spring that the work would have begun. But it was really the complexities attached to doing work on a former landfill involving the region, them having to budget what was necessary to do the right work, the requirements to the Ministry of the Environment took as long as it did. But I'm glad it's finally here, and we have to do it right. We owe that responsibility to not just Ward 6 residents, to our City of Kitchener residents.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Okay, so committee, we are 35 minutes over time, and we still have yet another item on the agenda. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to ask all of the committee members to keep we have 5 people in the queue to comment. I'd like everybody to attempt to keep their comments to a minimum, about a minute or less. I will give you more time if needed, but I challenge you to please keep it succinct so that we can be respectful of all the time that we need for the rest of the day. Okay, so first up we have Councillor Galloway-Sealock.
Yeah, being an avid user of this park, I get to hear rumblings from the people at the park about the look of it, the feel of it, and they're typically not good rumblings. There's always fight over trees at the splash pad area. There's only 2 tables that kind of sort of have shade, and they're always used. And so having that experience, I think, is important. And, you know, when you're with your kids and they're playing on the park, you want to have some relief yourself and a place for them to have relief as well from the burning hot sun, because we do want our kids to be active in these environments where they get to interact with other kids. This is not a ward item. This is a city-wide park. If you survey your residents, $10, it's likely that there's many of them that use this park. It's a place where families go to get together and meet people and have fun together with allowing their kids to interact. I think it's great that we have the walking track going in. I'm not happy with the cost, but I think it's time to do the provisional items, and it's definitely beyond time to get those wood chips out of that field and make it look like a park that we can be proud of.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I won't reiterate the point that this is a district park, and this is an area where you have to take your ward hat off and realize that it's a citywide initiative. And in that, I would say there has been significant investment in our 4, or upcoming significant investments in our 4 major parks. Victoria Park saw a huge renovation a few years back. Huron Natural Area is going to have their trails upgraded as a result of some federal funding match, which is fantastic. Kiwanis Park is right now in the middle of having the pool redone and the splash pad added. And the last one we needed to fix here is McLennan Park, and it is overdue, and I'm happy this before us. I'm not entirely happy with the amount that came forward, but I think it's especially important in this park because in our community we took what was literally one of the worst eyesore type of situations when you have a landfill, and we turned it into for a while there one of the most beautiful spots in the city, and it should be returned to that. So I will gladly support this.
Councillor Fernandez.
So I think it does have to be said, because I'm sure the public is going to be wondering what came first, the big music fest or the realization that something was terribly wrong at McLennan Park. So I think we have to make sure that we message this correctly as we move forward. A lot of people feel that had Big Music Fest not been there, we would never have seen this happen. I would say that there are probably other reasons that it came to light. We do have to make sure that we get this right now. There is a lot more cost, I think, than any of us had expected, and probably the staff had expected. So maybe what we can ask is, once the work is done,
Councillor Fernandez, I'm sorry, we have a point of order.
I think it's been pretty crystal clear by staff and by the region what was the cause of it, and it's by no case Big Music Fest was the cause of this. And was that
Yeah.
what you were saying? Okay.
Okay, and also,
Well,
regardless
I do apologize
of
if I
how
misunderstood
this,
your comments.
I'll give you more time, but regardless of how this came to light, thank goodness it did come to light, because it was a concern to the public.
all I'm saying is that it had to be said, because we know that that's what the public perception is, and we want to make sure that we communicate correctly so that we dispel that and make sure that people are not thinking we're trying to cover up for something that their perception is. So thank you for letting me continue. Once we complete the work, I think it's important that we engage the community to make sure that the trees are taken care of, that the vandalism doesn't... I mean, our staff is out there, but they can't be out there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Let's make this it's a district park. Let's make the community feel responsible for making sure that these trees are not, people are not hanging off of them, and that the vandalism doesn't happen to the picnic shelter, because these are amenities that are expensive, and we want to make sure that people can enjoy them for a very long time. So how would that, again, with the whole Love the Hood, let's see if we can engage the community once all the work is done, so that those assets will continue to thrive.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, when a project is 50 to 60% over what we have budgeted, and we plow ahead with it, that obviously makes it our number one priority in our community, and I don't think it is. And I'm not prepared to support a tender that is 50 to 60% over what we have budgeted. I think it really has to go back to square one. I'm totally supportive of spending the $1 million to look after what appears to be our most serious problems. That's fine. That's the amount of money we have. If it isn't, we really need to have had much longer discussion than an hour or so today, and quickly ratified by council. So at this point, I will not support what's before us, in the hope that it is sent back to the drawing boards and we come back with dealing with something that we can afford, or have a much longer discussion on why this is our number one priority.
Okay, we have 4 additional people in the queue. Let's again try to get through this agenda item, and I'm not trying to take away from everybody's comments. Everybody has the right to comment. I just would like us to endeavor to keep it brief. Thank you. Mayor Verbanovic.
Thank you very much. Just very briefly, I will be supporting the motion. I want to thank staff for all of the work that's been done to get this to this point, and the ward councillor for being a strong advocate of making sure that this continued to come forward. I think the important thing to remember here, and Councillor Davey touched on it, is that this is one of 4 assets that benefit our entire community. And we continually hear from our residents that they want to make sure that as we grow, we look after our assets, and we continually hear that parks are one of their greatest priorities as residents in our community. This is a park that literally serves people from all corners of Kitchener. And so I think it's imperative that we get on with it. It has taken too long to get to this point, but there's no point in looking backwards. We need to move forward, we need to get the work done, and we need to see this park get back to use by the residents of Kitchener.
Thank you. Councillor Yunetsky.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not happy where this is going either. I'm disappointed that the tender came in way over 60%, as was mentioned. And usually, if it's just over a few bucks, I can understand that. But here we have a substantial increase that's very, very much affecting us. We're going to be pulling money out of other accounts, as is pointed out in the report that we had already approved as part of the budget process. So now we're going back and extracting and stealing from those particular accounts to satisfy this particular problem. When you really look at it, here we are, the city money coming out from the taxpayer's right pocket, and from the region, their left pocket. Still the same taxpayer paying twice for this whole thing of a project that's way over tender. I'm not supporting it.
Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Madam Chair. I don't like the cost either, but I'm going to support this because I've watched this area, this park, turned from an unmitigated disaster with the days of methane and garbage and into a beautiful park. I think we have to continue the effort, so much effort we put into building a citywide park, and we have to continue that effort.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think when this happened in 2014, and when Big Music Fest came, I think it's a shame that we had to go through this. Big Music Fest really highlighted that park and how the vitality of that park. And recognizing that I don't think there's been another park in our community that's suffered through numerous challenges, and I think rightfully that the park has deficiencies that right from the get-go that we probably didn't recognize because of the uptake and the acceptance of this park from our community, which I think is a really positive sign. I think we need to get rid of this. I think it's a scar on our property, and my only comment that is I think the region should have flipped the bill a little bit more on this, but again, I recognize the challenges and everything else. It's something that we need to move forward.
Thank you, everybody, for keeping your comments brief. I appreciate it. So now it's time to vote. Do we have... Recorded vote has been called. All in favor? All opposed? And that carries. All right, let's see how we do on this last item, if we can speed things along or not. And if we need to have a fulsome discussion on it, then I think we're going to need to delay our discussion till after additional committee meetings to give time for the meeting. So we have a mover of item 6. Thank you, Councillor Yanetsky. Do you have comment?
Yeah, very briefly, all the residents are happy with this particular minor changes that we've had. Public meetings have taken place with it. I think it's straightforward. Nobody's here from the public, from our community. They have expressed no concern in terms of, hey, we have an issue. I think it's really just a straightforward approval here.
Okay. Any questions of staff or additional comment? Wow. Okay. Well done. So, all in favor? Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you. Oh, and thank you. Number 2 was deferred until, so Mayor Verbanovic.
Thank you very much. Yes, we deferred it to later in the meeting on the loading zone issue. And the question that we had was, this isn't an ideal solution for the businesses, or certainly for some of the businesses there. And have we explored other alternatives, using the opposite side of Duke Street, different things like that? To see where we might be able to go with this?
Thank you. Through the chair, with the development of the LRT along Duke Street, it's resulted in a one lane in each direction with no parking whatsoever. So the roadway width will not allow us to put a loading zone within the block on Duke between Queen and Frederick Street. So this is the best alternative that was developed by staff and confirmed through outreach to the businesses impacted.
So right now on King Street, when there are delivery vehicles, they turn their flashers on and they basically cars work around them. Can the same not happen on Duke?
Through the chair, it would all depend on what regulations the region end up putting on Duke Street. If it's no parking, then yes, that type of activity could continue. But I would suggest that were to start, that would quickly be identified as a concern, and I would suggest the region would follow up with potentially making it no stopping. Just because it's only 2 lanes width. I appreciate your comments about King, but probably a little different animal there.
Because, this was brought to my attention by one of the folks on the Duke Street food block on the weekend. So I'll leave it today. Let's see it, I guess, go forward, and I'll talk to the ward councillor, and we can have some discussions and with staff in the intervening week between now and council.
Thank you.
So I'll move it in the meantime.
Say it again?
I'll move it in the meantime.
Okay, so we're going to move it. In the meantime, we have additional councillors clicked in for questions or comments. Councillor Cazzola.
Yeah, my concern was Queen Street is a terribly busy street. Does this 30-minute loading zone go from the whole day, or can it be limited so that it's not allowed at certain peak times of the day? Because I don't know how people are going to navigate on Queen Street. It's a very busy street.
Through the chair, this loading zone is proposed to be 24 hours a day. When staff investigated implementing this loading zone, it was investigated by staff to ensure that traffic could still be maintained on Queen Street. Due to the extra width in this area, we can put the loading zone in and traffic in both directions will not be impacted.
So it won't block the whole lane? The map here looked to me like it was going to block the whole lane off.
Through the chair, no, it will not block the lane, and we've also spoken with the Region of Waterloo staff to get their support for this measure as this signalized intersection is under their control.
And so you're saying it has no impact whatsoever on traffic?
Through the chair, there is plenty of space on the roadway to accommodate traffic. This can be accommodated on the side of the road without limiting that ability.
Yeah. Just as an aside, do we have the option on these types of layovers of putting them in for certain periods of the day? Do we even have that option?
Through the chair, yes, we can put any timelines we want on it. I would suggest that the timelines of the businesses open on Duke Street would suggest it's going to be needed pretty much all day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Galloway-Sealock.
Yeah, just wanted to quickly ask about the number 26 there. That's a parking lot, right? On the map on page 2-3.
Through the chair, I believe that is the parking lot for the church and the, yes.
Has there been any thought given to asking them if there's the ability, because most of those only operate during the week, to, if they're willing to do it within a certain time frame that doesn't necessarily affect that the loading zone be allowed in there?
Through the chair, no, we did not approach the property owner about accommodating the entire street's needs within their parking lot. Having said that, it is owned by the church, I understand, and that entire block is going to be redeveloped from what I'm understanding, so I don't think that opportunity would present itself.
Could it at least temporarily, potentially?
I can't speak for the property owner and whether they would allow it.
If other people are more aware, that's fine. I just thought I'd throw it out as an option. I'll leave it with everyone.
Thank you. I appreciate that's a good creative way to look at it, but it's not a long-term solution. Yep. Okay. If there are no further comments, then we need to vote on number 2. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. And that leaves us to the end of our meeting. And do we need to go into special council right away?